So good morning and welcome. We certainly appreciate your giving up your Friday, part of your Friday to join us. This is FACCC's annual part-time symposium, and we will be hearing from several people today. We'll start off with a little get to know you icebreaker teaching kind of thingy, and then we'll go from there. So my name is Raymond Brennan. I forgot to introduce myself. And I'm on the part-time committee with several other people who've been instrumental in putting this together for you. And so part-time committee is made up of a number of people from a number of districts, and they've all been working very hard to put this together. So if you get a chance, you can always thank them, either Franzak, Hernan Lee, Andrew Ailman, Laura Hartley, Dana Mercurio, Evelyn Patton Amherst, David Milroy, Cornelia Alzheimer, Valerie Chow, Douglas Dildine, Barbara Bear, and myself. And of course, we couldn't do this without the professional staff. Lydia is in the background, but she actually does everything, so we don't have to work hard. And so we really appreciate that. And I guess Hernan Lee, who's also on staff with FACC, will be taking over as the liaison from FACC to the committee. So that would be most all of us. And then the professional staff has made this really easy. If you have any issues or anything, if you put them in chat, Lydia is monitoring chat. I'll be monitoring chat in the breakouts, but if you have any questions or anything, technical questions, she'd be the person to go to. And I think, that's about as much as you want to hear from me. Let me introduce somebody above my pay grade, Deidre Franzak, who is the Executive Part-Time Officer on FACC's Board of Governors. And she's going to speak to us for a few moments about the wonderful organization that's providing this service for you. Deidre?
Thanks, Ray. I don't get the part about the pay grade. Yeah, we all got so much compensation for this advocacy work. So, I just want to say, first of all, thank you. And thank you to all those people that Ray just mentioned, and welcome to everyone who's here. This is probably my favorite FACC event of the year, because I love being with part-time colleagues. And last year's, for those of you who were at the symposium, was awesome, even though we had to do it this way, virtually. As it turns out, people found that really accessible. So many more people came than might have come if they had to fly someplace. So I just want to introduce FACC a little bit. First of all, I'm on the board, as Ray said, and I'm the executive officer for part-time faculty. And I teach at Santa Rosa Junior College and have been there in the philosophy department since 2005, teaching part-time. My colleagues all think that at some point I was full-time and I've just retired and am now part-time because I've been there so long, but no, I've been part-time that whole darn time. So FACC is here to serve all the faculty of California community colleges, all 115 districts, I think we're at now. The mission is to inform, educate, and empower, as well as advocate for faculty. And I think advocating is probably the piece that people know us for the best, in service to our students and to the communities of California. So we have to keep our own constituents at the forefront. The part-time faculty committee analyzes and recommends legislation that affects part-time faculty. We organize and present workshops on part-time issues, and we'll be doing a little bit of those today. We'll provide insight to the FACC Board of Governors on specific part-time issues. And I can tell you from my experience, the board really does rely on this committee to bring the experience of part-time faculty to them and raise issues that need to be addressed at a statewide level. So this is an annual event. Is put together specifically to address the needs of all the part-time faculty statewide. So this is when we all get to see one another, make those connections. I just wanted to say, with regard to the advocacy, we've done quite a bit in recent years. Some of you remember when part-time office hours was a big issue at the forefront, and some schools pay them and some schools don't. And nobody can really tell the schools exactly how to negotiate their contracts. A lot of people don't understand which part is the district and which part is the state. One thing that we were able to get done at the state level is that all districts now need to report whether or not they pay part-time faculty and be transparent about that. So if you're going to sign up for a school and take on office hours, whether that's going to get compensated and you were able to make that choice. The lab faculty from 67% to 85%, or maybe even 87%. Unfortunately, although it completely went through the legislature with no votes, 0 no's, our governor declined to sign the bill. So you can probably tell from the tone of my voice what my thoughts are about that. And so we're looking at what can we present this year to advocate more strongly for the needs of part-time faculty. One of the things that we requested immediately was, wait a minute, where's all the money for the part-timers? Come on, this is ridiculous. And of course, they always say, well, you know, there's a lot of money for full-time hires, to which we say, yeah, but the schools don't seem to know that we should be eligible for those funds. We should get some kind of a hiring preference. So we're now negotiating on guidelines that we can propose to the legislature to encourage the districts to give, whether it's a preference, a point boost, or somehow encourage them to move their own part-time people into those full-time hire slots. We also requested, they said, how much would you want for part-timers? And we said, oh, how about $300 million? And they said, okay, we'll put that in the governor's ask for this year, which frankly surprised a little of us, but there it is in the governor's ask for this year. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that it stays there, or at least as much of it stays there as we possibly can. And also healthcare benefits. So that seems to be something that legislators are more open to now, is considering that many of us teach across multiple schools, and we teach full-time or more in some cases across these multiple schools, and yet we're not eligible for healthcare benefits. So different people are looking at different options for how to possibly make that happen. So I just wanted to give you a few concrete details of, well, what does FACC do for part-timers? Well, you know, we've done a fair amount, and you know, you can get more details. I don't want to exceed my time, but just to give you a little flavor of how we're working this year. All right, I will shut up, Ray. I know you've got a tight schedule. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Deidre. And just a couple of footnotes. The governor did veto AB 375 on bad information, but he did in his veto message have this line about how much he cared about us. So that's when Deidre and others asked for $300 million. And so we're going to ask him, you know, you got it, now give it to us. Let's see how that works. And I think the other thing Deidre forgot to say is that those of you that are attending that think this is worth your while, there is a form on the flyer that you received where you can join FACC, and it's painless, I think. I'm not sure, but I think it's painless. Okay, so for the next little while, if you please keep your microphones for the whole day, I guess, on mute unless you're speaking, that would be helpful. So we don't have to hear, you know, things we don't want to hear, things we don't want to share. So for the next 35 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to have people randomly put into groups. There'll be a member of the part-time committee in each of the rooms. And what we're asking people to do is just take 2 minutes and explain something that you do in the classroom that's really effective. It doesn't have to be original, it just has to be effective. The thing is, you're the teachers, you're the ones that in the trenches, you're the ones that know how to do the job. And unlike the reformers that are telling us how to do our jobs, you know what you're doing. And so I think it's a good way to get to know each other. 2 minutes, because there's a lot of people and not a lot of time. And so those of you that are on the committee that are going to be put in these rooms, if you want to play bad cop and tell people your 2 minutes are up, shut up, that'd be great. So anyway, we'll do that for 35 minutes. If you have time after everybody's had a chance for their 2 minutes and you want to go back and revisit something, that's great, but give everybody a chance to speak, please. And so with that, we will have, you know, everybody go into their groups. Lydia will assign you, or something will happen to, you know, magically be transported like Cinderella's carriage. And then we'll come back at 10:45 and hear the good news about Parity. Oh, let me repeat. I certainly enjoyed the group I was with, a lot of interesting things to share, and I hope the same thing was true for you folks. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a panel, 2 speakers, and they're going to talk about EDD, which for many part-timers this summer has been just a nightmare. And just to introduce the two, the first is John Govsky, and many of you know John, maybe you've never met him or anything, but he's done a Herculean effort putting online a step-by-step process to get yourselves into EDD and how to answer the questions and everything. And I'm sure he'll be sharing the link for that. It's just the best thing on the web to deal with EDD, frankly, other than going to FACC and saying, please help me. The other one is Doug Dildine, who teaches at DVC, and he is the theater department there, and he's quite the the theatrical kind of guy, but he's also very much in tune with, and he knows what's going on in the background and that sort of thing, and so forth. I'm sorry, there's a question in chat. What is EDD? It is the short version is it's the unemployment people. It's the people we apply for unemployment in the summer when we don't get a class. And this summer, hundreds of part-time faculty have been denied their benefits, and they have to go through this torturous process. And so that's where we're at. So John, Doug, I'm going to shut up, which everybody's going to appreciate, and you two can talk, which I'll also appreciate.
Hey John, how you doing? Years ago, when part-time faculty were introduced originally as only a little bit of a appetizer, real estate, Department of Justice, just a few different sidelines. Sometimes there would be an engineering piece, but real estate was one of the mainstays that you'd see throughout the community college world. We were still called junior colleges back then. But districts started realizing that contingent faculty under Title V were disposable and cheaper than full-timers, and you could do anything you wanted with them, and they do whatever the administration asked. Because, you know, here today, gone tomorrow. A lot of them were high school teachers in the beginning, and just coming over and getting some really nice money, because community colleges back then were really paying more than state colleges. So it was a nice job, you had status, and the part-time faculty grew and grew and grew. For example, the English department at DVC, where I teach right now, is about 40, 45 full-timers and 100 part-timers. And that's not too different in math. So what we're really talking about is the overuse and abuse of part-time faculty. One of the abuses was the state of California did not recognize us in between terms, because we're sort of unemployed between terms, and we do not have a guarantee of getting a class in a future term. So there was a lawsuit, and it was won against EDD, and it's called the Cervisi decision. And I think John can talk about that very nicely too. And I'm going to give it over to John in just a brief moment. I just want to give a little background. But this last year, EDD was sued by San Francisco Unified School District, and they really reacted in a very interesting way. They ignored Cervisi, which is not in peril, and they just targeted educators. And all it is when you say you're an educator, it creates a code, and they put that code into their system and blocked educators. And if you weren't blocked, it might be because you filed as something else. I work for my union. It's a different job. It's not being an educator. They didn't block people that way. But if you put in that you were an educator, they just created an algorithm and blocked everybody. And even though Ray just said hundreds, even though it's not true, EDD acknowledges 139,000 people still haven't been paid. So putting an algorithm to the previous media statements they've made, I'd say that originally it was about 500,000 people. John, where are you?
I'm here.
There you are.
Thanks, Doug. Just a little bit of background. Doug mentioned the Cervisi decision, and that is unique to California. And it virtually guarantees that part-time faculty in the community college system, or basically any contingent faculty in higher ed in California, can get unemployment when they're between semesters. And that is not the norm in the rest of the country. Adjunct faculty all over the country salivate at what we have in California and would love to be able to get a virtual guarantee of winning an appeal on unemployment in their state. And it's something that AFT has been working on with the Department of Labor for years with very little success. And that court decision was 1989. It was won by Bob Bezemek, who is to this day still the main CFT attorney for the California Federation of Teachers. And that decision says that because we are hired semester to semester, we do not have, quote, reasonable assurance, unquote, of employment. And that is the linchpin on which our guarantee rests. So one of the things that I find frustrating is that many people don't know this. Many people don't know they're entitled to get this money between semesters, and it's significant money. Generally speaking, the maximum is $450 a week, and that is several $1,000s during a break, at least. So one of the things you want to do is communicate to all your folks is that you folks should apply for this as soon as every semester is over. It's a hassle, but it's not that big a hassle given that you're going to get a couple $1,000s after you file. So make sure people know to do this. That's the biggest battle is most adjunct faculty. And I've talked to people who have taught for 10 years going, I didn't know I could do this because they saw an email or something. So communicate that to folks. Now, as Doug mentioned, there's been some serious problems. EDD has been so completely overwhelmed. They were already in not good shape before the pandemic and the economic dislocation. And they got compounded, and many people filed and didn't hear back for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it got so bad that people started calling their representatives in the state legislature, and the Democratic caucus actually got together and worked on some things to help their constituents. They came up with a standardized form that you will find on the home pages of most of your Democratic legislators. And so one of the things you can do if you have people who are stuck, tell them to contact their legislator, their representative, especially if they're a Democrat. If one of them is a Dem and one's a Republican, tell them to call it the Democrat, because the Democratic office is quite responsive to helping constituents navigate through unemployment. And they have really helped almost everybody I've talked to that we've sent to John Laird or Mark Stone in my case. So that is something that is very helpful. I know people are posting in the chat about FACCC has some fantastic help for people. And I did put together a website to help people file, which many people have told me is very useful. Because I got tired of, quite frankly, answering the same questions over and over and over and over again every time we did unemployment workshops in my local. And so I wrote a website. And if you're not doing workshops for your folks every semester, you should do it at the very end of every semester and help people file. They will love it. You really, that's a real great service to our faculty. And, it helps us avoid burnout. This is money that we've paid into the system. This is not a handout. We deserve it. And our members should know about this. So please make sure people at least know that they can file and then make the choice consciously if they don't want to. I'm not sure how much time we have or what the format is for questions, so I think I'll shut up for a minute.
We have quite a while, and I see we have a number of questions. One of them was, can you file if you're holding another job? The whole point is you have to be, there's an aspect of unemployment called underemployed. And so depending on how much you're being paid, if you're making $450 a week or more, you do not qualify for unemployment. It's when you dip below the maximum amount you can get. And even though John mentioned 450, not everybody gets that much. It's partially based on what you're earning. So if you're teaching a couple classes, usually you'll get the maximum amount regularly. The people who get kind of tagged are the people who only teach every other term or only teaching one class. So if you lose the class, you're unemployed. There's no underemployment. But many people work outside, and during the pandemic, they were turned down. It was just on in San Francisco. It's called Cron 4. It's a NBC type channel, or it used to be an NBC type channel. I think it's an independent now. They're the only ones in California that I've seen, and that includes the LA Times, that haven't just printed the media statements of EDD, their official statements, which have misled the situation continuously for over a year and a half. But underemployment is something that's available too, but you have to be earning under whatever your EDD maximum amount is. And John says 450, that's quite typical for part-time faculty who are teaching. But I have said that to part-time faculty. They said, well, I'm only getting 425. And I go, oh, well, yeah, you need to work a little more to build that up. I was blocked. I was owed money since last December, and I just got it this last September. So it was quite a while. They had to pay me over $11,000 when they finally did, and I couldn't get it all at once. Bank of America had put a hold on the EDD accounts because there'd been a lot of fraud. They were being hacked by people who were pretending to be us. And so they'd go into our accounts and they would siphon them off. But when I finally did get the money, it was because of FACC. Stephanie Goldman, who was mentioned in the chat, got me in touch with an anonymous policy person at FACC, and they actually went in. And I had something like 18 or 19 certifications. That's where you tell them what you do every week. And there was a hold not on one, but on all of them, each one. So it took him 45 minutes just to take all the holds off. And what was happening is, and John really said this quite well, that EDD has always been a problem. Their computer system and their staff not trained, don't know what Servici is. But they had to hire a lot of people because they lost a lot of people and they didn't train them. And so they turned down thousands of people. They called people and then hung up on them while they were in the conversation. They called up people and then turned them down for no good reason. And so what Cron 4 just put in the paper yesterday is EDD is reopening for anyone who was displaced by the pandemic. This is pressure that FACCC, CFT, and I'm with CCCI, it's the independent unions. All that pressure that we've been putting on them, working hard to get them to fix the problem, not say, yes, we're guilty. I don't care. I just want them to be streamlined and to stop trying to trick part-timers, stop trying to put little traps in the forms to try and catch us from stealing their money. And all this time, their rhetoric has been, we're cheating. And it's that concerted effort to, put down faculty and say we're lazy, we get paid too much for doing too little. I mean, all of the mythology about us pours out of EDD. But again, we're talking about Campaign for College Success, Lumina, Gates Foundation, Koch brothers. All of these people are trying to hurt public education. And I know it sounds like I'm sweeping out into a much broader subject, but it is part of a concerted effort. The online college, then the vetoing 375, which would have raised us to 80% load. There was another famous legislative piece of law that he vetoed, and that was making it easier for farm workers to unionize. So his message was anti-union from the get-go. And he talks a good line, our governor, but he's anti-union, and he's not the friend of faculty yet. Although he's trying to make up for it with some money, we just have to hold his feet to the fire that he actually does it. I think John said that very well. John?
Doug, can I say a few couple things?
Please.
First off, because a lot of adjunct faculty do have side gigs, there's another aspect of that you want to be aware of. One is, of course, are you making a little bit of money? And that would perhaps offset what your award would be if you were partially employed. But the other factor people don't think about is the amount of time. And that is another thing that EDD is concerned about. For example, I have a side business, as many adjuncts do, right? I publish a political cartoon newspaper. That is a business. It was supposed to make me money. And the teaching was supposed to be for fun on the side. I got it backwards. And my comic newspaper doesn't make me any money. It's break even, pretty much. And it does take some time. So I report dutifully that yes, I have a business and yes, but it doesn't make me money. But every time I have the phone interview, they say, well, that's fine. We don't care about the money. How much time a week do you spend on that? Because that's time you're not looking for work and you're supposed to be ready and available to take a job. So that's something to be aware of if you have a phone interview and a side gig, they're going to look at how many hours you work per week that you're not available, and that you'll get dinged for that. So that's one thing. I also noticed in the chat, I think it was Donna said something about putting that you're not a union member. You can do that. There are a couple of, when you apply, there are some gotcha questions. And as Doug mentioned, some of those are like, are you on a recess break? And if you say yes, they'll try to deny you. Do you have an assignment? Do you have a date to start? Some of these questions, it's not clear the best way to answer them. For example, if you look at different filing guides, FACC may say one thing and my guide may say something else. For example, the classic is, do you have an assignment for the next semester? Do you have a start date? And some guides say no, even if you do have an assignment, because it can always be canceled. And that's reasonable. I generally advise people to be honest and say yes, but then make sure you also say, and it can be canceled for a variety of reasons. And I have never had that be a problem. Other people can get denied by saying that, but then they can explain that in the phone interview. And usually that's not a problem. Saying you're not a union member, if you're a union member, I guess you could do that. I've always said I'm a union member. I've never been denied for that. In fact, I have to say I'm an officer and then I have to fill out even more of the stupid form. That's never been a problem because our unions don't look for work for us the way trade unions work. And that is the heart of that question. But there are other questions involved in that too, where you can make that clear. So I'm not necessarily agreeing that you should just say you're not a union member or that you don't have an assignment. There are lots of cloudy ways to answer. Some of the application is not black and white, and there are different reasonable people can answer those questions differently. But the fact of the matter is our contingency is what guarantees us the right for unemployment. And even if you answer a gotcha question wrong in the eyes of EDD, you will win on appeal. So that's the message there. I think I'll stop. I think there was a question. No, I thought I saw a hand up.
I had a hand up, but I don't know if Raymond, if we're doing like a Q&A on this, and I could just leave it in the chat, so that's fine.
Why don't you just ask it?
Okay, I don't know where Raymond. No, so something as someone who has applied for unemployment for, I don't know, probably a good decade. I've gone through this process for so many years and even before I was in higher ed. But I think something I agree with is, especially in higher ed, we are not guaranteed work. Even if we have a contract that we have signed, as part-timers, we are still contingent. So it doesn't matter if you have signed your document, you have a full list of students in a roster, at any point it can be taken from you. And yes, you can always go to your union and grieve these things, but ultimately we are not guaranteed anything. And so anytime I do my EDD paperwork, I always say, no, I do not have a guarantee of employment. No, I do not have a union that helps me look for future work, because they don't. That's not their job. I'm not a plumber, I'm not an electrician, I don't come from those types of unions. So I think it's unfortunate that all the colleges are doing something different in their workshops. I think we need to come together and have a proper understanding so that we don't continue to have these issues, because for the several years that I've been doing it, the only time I had an issue was the first time I ever filed working in EDD, and that was 8 years ago. Since then, I've never had an issue. I have gotten all my payments on time. And I think one of my colleges does the best workshops, and they're not lying to people about, oh yeah, you have a contract, but say you don't. It's really the fact that when it comes down to it, we have no guarantees in our positions as adjuncts, and we need to be clear about that with EDD. So I encourage people to really do their due diligence with their research and reach out to their unions and make sure their workshops are teaching them the proper etiquette for filling out those forms.
And I just want to also mention that a lot of what you want to do is make sure that EDD understands you're not a K-12 teacher. So you never use the title teacher. You always use college professor. College professor is the best thing to describe your status, because you put teacher, they think K-12, they deny you. So you always want to make that clear.
If I can interject here, I have never at Butte College, we've always have our workshops, and we always tell them, you don't have a contract, you have a teaching agreement. So if you look at the teaching agreement, it specifically says contingent upon budget, programs, and enrollment. We don't have contracts, right? And I think that's, when you put down a contract, that's the red flag for EDD. So say you have a teaching agreement, because there is absolutely no guarantee.
Good point, John.
We have two hands up, Carlene.
Yeah,
What I was going to say is that our document says tentative offer. Do not use the word contract, just like John said, do not use it. Our document says tentative offer. That's what I say I have. And I emphasize the fact that they can cancel our classes not only before the semester starts, but even after we have met with our students. A couple of years ago, I had met with my students and they canceled the class the first week. And we have no control over that. And I've used that when I've had the EDD interviews. I've emphasized that. Luckily, the interviewers know that this is the case. And the other thing is, somebody just mentioned about an appeal. I have been on unemployment ever since the end of spring 2020, and it just expired the end of September. But I had used up the original appeal. I had to file for a new one that went on to appeal, and where it was rejected, I turned in the appeal and I was sitting on it. And what happened, and there's a Facebook page, California Unemployment Problems and Solutions. They have even said, just wait, because a lot of times those appeals, they look at them and they said, oh yeah, you're right. You don't even end up in a hearing. So don't give up. A lot of times they're just so overwhelmed with COVID that it just takes extra time. And like John said, there are people to contact. Somebody here posted that FACCC has somebody in particular, but a lot of times it's just, if you can wait it out, do it.
I was just going to chime in very briefly. Everything that what Carolyn just said, John, Douglas, has been spot on. Not going to give you a big narrative here, but June of this year, I was meant to get benefits and they were completely locked, like, I guess hundreds of thousands of other people that are, adjuncts, and of course, people in the non-teaching. And it ran me into the ground because I'd never had any problems, and I'm a straight shooter. That's all I do is I teach philosophy, don't have any other side gigs or businesses. And it was kind of a shocker, and you couldn't get through, as you all know. The 1-800 number was locked up, and it was like being in a Kafkaesque nightmare. It really was. And finally, I did call, and I just have a little bit of advice here. That's the only little bit I can give that helped me. I talked to a friend who teaches at Mesa, teaches psychology, and he said, you have to call your local congressperson or senator. So it was Tony Atkins, an assistant answered. They just put me on a list, and they said, we'll do what we can. I think they bluff a little bit too. And I waited, and it didn't do too much. And he said, you have to call repeatedly. So I called a second time, and here's my recommendation. Everybody here is, articulate and, well-informed. You have to kind of not filibuster them, but you have to use a squeaky wheel technique. As I talked to the young man, I was very polite. I didn't do anything to set him off. I said, I'm running out of savings, and I don't mean to sound like I'm pathetic, but it was true. I just was expressing the truth. I said, if you could do anything to nudge them, I said, I know that I have a straightforward case. Like I think Douglas said that it's 45 minutes. I said, I know when they look at my case, because I've never had any problems in the past, that they can resolve this. And you know what he said? He said, because it was just saying certified, but it was in it was on lock or whatever, or pending. Pending was the key word. And I said, I have 12 pending cases. I have, I need food, pay my bills and so on. I tried to say it in a pretty sober way. And he said, they'll be getting back to you soon. They've hired a lot of people. That was a load of rubbish probably, but they weren't going to get back to me. Because I had friends that they weren't getting back to. So I was on the line with him for about 20 minutes. I said, well, whatever you can do, I'd be grateful. And then I sent him a follow-up email. That was on a Wednesday. 2 days later, it all came through as if I had hit the jackpot. All of that, it was like $8,000 that they owed me. And so I do think a squeaky wheel technique can work. It's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of your time, but at least get your name in there. And I think they work a kind of squeaky wheel program. If they can find a way to deny someone, to get rid of them, someone that's passive or doesn't realize, right? So it worked in my case, and I didn't do anything exceptional, but just kind of filibuster them and give them, hey man, I need my money. Anyway, leave it there.
Oh, we haven't mentioned the ID.me. That was another incredible stumbling block because it came without instructions at first. And people got thrown by that because even I was told, no, they want your eyes. And, and I was looking it up and reading about it. The ACLU came out against it, but they had a little bit of information about it because I'd gone to the EDD site and they had shut it down. They'd shut the site down because it was overwhelmed. So not only were the phones shut down, but they shut down the site. I just wanted to mention that because it was mentioned in the last consumer, but they just didn't know what to do. And the people were pushing the wrong buttons and they didn't understand how to take, he's right. They put blocks on every certification, not just one block on you, the person, but on every certification had a block. So even if they released one, they didn't know that they had to release all of them. And in my case, it took 45 minutes to do that. And there is a way to release them automatically. They don't know how to do it.
Raymond, you're on mute. Raymond, you're on mute. Raymond, you're on mute.
Well, that would be a problem. There are several people who've had their hands up and their arms are getting tired. And so Lindsay Weiler, I think, is the winner for hands up longest. So if you'd take her question and see these other people's questions, that'd be great. So Lindsay, please go ahead.
Oh, I thought that I saw a few other people ahead of me, but I'll make mine super quick. Don't forget to have taxes taken out of it too. Because if you don't have taxes taken out of it, this is something that my CPA warned my husband. He was on unemployment at the start of the pandemic. And they said, if you don't have taxes taken out, it will be taken out at the end of the year in one big chunk. So make sure that you are signed up for having taxes taken out.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Maha, go ahead.
Hi, I actually have a slightly different question. You know, when you apply for EDD and let's say then you start teaching, do you keep that going to the rest of the year, or do you stop answering every 2 weeks the questions? I have two questions. That's the first one.
You can do it either way. You can either just stop filling the forms out, or you can continue to fill them out and say that you've made X amount of dollars. You can do it either way. Now, what happened in this last cycle is that when they got so backed up, the people that stopped the forms just stopped filling them out when they started working again, which is one of your options. When they went to restart it, they had a problem. And that was a little bit of, that was one of the many bottlenecks that was hit over this last summer. But other than that, you can do it either way. And in theory, it should be fine either way.
Oh, okay, because I stopped this year. We'll see if I can get back. Well, then my next question is, if you do take up a job, say at Starbucks or something, and then when they're asking you, have you looked for a job, do you have to look for a job at Starbucks, or can you just say, look for a job in higher education? Does it affect how you look for a job if you've only been in education?
It's, well, if you have a job at Starbucks and you're making over $450 a week, because they actually pay pretty well, some of these little.
I don't, but I'm just.
Well, another factor is when you fill out the form, there's a place where it asks you what your skills are and what other jobs you can do. So if you put barista in there, then yeah,
then you have to look for
yeah, then I guess Starbucks would be a legitimate place to look for work. But if you just say, I can only teach, that's all I do, which is what I generally do, then I've never, you know what, I filed for many years. I've never still to this day been required to fill out the job search. Unless they tell you you're required to do it, you can skip those questions, by the way. But if you do have to do it because they've required of you, you can literally go to Craigslist and send a few emails and say, here's the places I applied. It doesn't take very long. It doesn't have to be any college.
To that point, Maha, it will ask you, are you looking for work? That's some of the standard questions. Are you able to work and are you looking for work? You always want to say yes to those things, but predominantly, unlike other people who are, let's say, lose their job from Starbucks, they might be required, or depending on what their situation is, they may be required to look for work every week and provide the name and phone number of that potential employer. Usually as higher ed people, we do not have to provide proof of that, but we still have to say, yeah, I'm looking for work. Because technically a lot of us still are, if that applies to you. But even if it doesn't, say that you are, and you don't have to say who, majority of the time. I'd be shocked if you ever had to.
I just say I looked in higher ed and I send them the email for that. That's what I've been doing the whole time. So basically, if I do decide to look for a job at Ralph's or Starbucks or something like that, it would backfire, because then I'll have to always say I'm looking. That's now my other skill.
No, it's not going to backfire. I don't think there's such a thing as backfiring. They just want to know that you're not sponging the system. That's all they care about.
Yeah, so I don't think that would backfire. But do they ask you, do they require you to do that? Because most adjuncts aren't required to show a job search. Yeah. Well, if they don't specifically tell you you're required, you can ignore those questions.
Unless there's an asterisk.
They sent a message out in the end of July, maybe middle of August. I'd have to look it up. And they set out saying, okay, now this is a warning. We're going to start making you tell us that you're looking for work, and we want to see those things filled out. Are they still doing that? It's possible.
Well, yeah, but that was just restoring what was before the pandemic. See, during the pandemic, they said, okay, you know what? We're not going to require that you look for work because there's no jobs out there. Then they just set this thing out that said, okay, we're basically resuming the old policy. It wasn't like all of a sudden everybody has to look for work. It was just that they were rescinding the policy that nobody had to look for work.
Correct.
And so a lot of people looked at that and go, oh my God, I better start listing my job search again. And that's really not the way to interpret that press release.
Okay, I'm going to call in the next person. Marianne, you've had your hand up. So it'll be Marianne and then Tina, then Scott, and then David. So Marianne, your question.
Okay, so there was a little bit of back and forthing in the chat. I just wanted to clarify, are we considered seasonal workers or no?
No, absolutely not.
No.
You always answer no to that question.
Okay, we are not. And
You're
then
not
someone.
seasonal, you're not on a recess or a break. Those are always no
Okay.
gotcha questions. That's right. No.
Okay, and then the other thing is, what is WEP? Someone referred to that in the chat. These acronyms really throw me. It's always helpful if someone will at least say one time what the whole thing means and then use the acronym.
WEEP and GPO are federal laws. Sorry? They're federal laws that charge fees to people who are in retirement plans. This usually is, the only retirement plans left are unions and state workers, federal workers. You know, they have these plans. They there's a gradation on it, but what they do is they take money out of your Social Security based on how many years you put money into Social Security at a level that's, you know, livable.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the windfall. It's the windfall.
Windfall
Yes.
tax elimination.
And we have a
So-
whole session on it coming up.
Right, and
Thank you.
so they'll talk about that then.
Okay,
But
Fair enough.
yeah, we're gonna cover it.
What if
thank you.
Sorry, what if you you work in California, you teach in California, but you live in Washington? Are you still eligible to receive benefits?
Not in California. Have to file in Washington.
I would be taxed in California, but I file in Washington.
Well, it's where you live.
Oh, actually, that's true. It's where I live. So I would be taxed in Washington. All right. So
The rules of,
right.
as John said earlier, and it's not necessarily easy to get unemployment when you're, you know, teaching. They don't have a Cervisi decision in Washington.
Yeah. Okay. So
But if you're unemployed, you're unemployed, and answer honestly, and, you know, hopefully they will give you money during that time frame.
let me see. Okay. Thank you.
Tina, was that your only question? I think you also had that in the chat. Do you have another question?
No, that's my
Okay,
question.
perfect.
Thank you.
Scott, you are next. Scott Douglas.
Well, I'll try to be brief. Maha had asked about, during those periods when you're paid, do you continue to fill out the form? And John said it really doesn't matter, except that it can matter if you fill it out every week and now you hit spring break. Guess what? You don't have any income. Fill it out, you're going to get your $450 for spring break. It doesn't sound ethical, but I believe it's legal and proper in that regard. So be aware of that possibility. It might be worth it to continue filling that out, saying I've made too much money, and then all of a sudden I have a week where I made no money.
Actually, you are on a break then. You are guaranteed work on the other side of that week.
That's true, but
so
I'm not
you would
filing,
have
so I'm not
to-
answering that question.
Well, that's true, but what you are doing is, if you get caught, and this is what they're looking for right now, because of the lawsuit by San Francisco, if you get caught, you will be banned from ever getting unemployment insurance for the rest of your natural life. That's how they do it. They don't, I mean, there are fines and there is the possibility of going to jail, but you basically lose your ability to file for unemployment.
Yeah, I would
Social
also
Security
caution-
has similar rules.
Yeah, because spring break is not the same as being laid off at the end of the semester, because you're still working after the break, and so technically you would not meet the guidelines of being eligible for unemployment.
That would be the same
This is
as
being
filing
recorded,
for the
right?
week of
Yeah, so
Thanksgiving.
you don't want to do that. That would not be legal.
And you're still grading papers, you're still, you know, answering emails, you're still being paid. You know, they don't stop your payment that week.
So while I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying, I've done it when I was underemployed, and now it doesn't seem to matter, because when you're underemployed, it's based on how much you make, not how much you're going to make next week.
But spring break is a different kettle of fish than when the term ends December 15th. Even if you do come back, in mid-January and you happen to get classes, whether it's 1 or 3. So that is legitimate. I always get that 4 to 5 weeks, and it's like a lifesaver.
Right.
That's legitimate, because you know, if you're not tenured, you're not getting any pay over that time. I mean, your pay ends, I mean, even though they spread it out over 5 weeks, you're not generating any income. So I think that that's legitimate, correct? Or
It's what you're earning, not what you're being paid. What you're being paid is meaningless to EDD. All they care about is what did you earn that week? And on spring break, you earned money. So you need to
But
put it
yes.
in there. When you certify, you need to put in that week's pay.
But you did not earn any money on spring break.
But
That's
that's
not
so,
true.
so Scott, when you look at your paycheck, I encourage you to look at your pay stub. And when you look at your pay stub, you'll see that your payment, we're basically paid like a salaried employee, where your payments are broken into 4 equal chunks. So you are being paid during the week of spring break. It would be like a K through 12 teacher filing for unemployment on Thanksgiving break. They wouldn't do it because they're still employed.
You
They're
are being
still
paid.
paid.
You are being paid, but you earned no money. As Douglas said, they care about what you earned.
Well, wait. The other piece they care about is whether or not you have reemployment guarantee or assurance. And you do after spring break.
Just like,
I mean, unless they cancel, no, because they're not going to cancel your class after spring break. It's different than a break between semesters when your contract ends. You're still under contract. Whether or not you're being paid for that week or not, that's really not the question. The fact is you do have reasonable assurance of being employed after the break. That's the key. It's not about the money. It's about the reasonable assurance of being employed after the break is over. You do have it. And I want to be clear that you're not eligible during spring break for unemployment benefits. That's my understanding of the law. So people should be really clear. File for that at your own risk.
Yeah. All right, Scott, thank you. David, you had your hand up next, and then Stephanie, and then Arnie.
Yes, earlier we talked about tricky questions. I remember quite clearly them asking, to the effect, were you offered employment either written, verbal, or implied? Which, or did someone wink at you in the hallway? You have a job. I think that went away. I don't remember seeing it recently, but I remember seeing it. So they do put things in there that just try to catch everybody. What do you guys think?
Well, for me, for 4 years running, they asked me about, am I on a break from LA Unified School District? And my response was, that's a hell of a commute. You know, the 525 miles every day, back and forth to teach classes. Plus I had to clone myself and be in 2 different places at once. And I asked the policy guy at EDD about that, and he goes, yeah, that's shameful, I know. They do that. They come up with these, you know, exactly what you're saying. Did they wink at you in the hallway? I would not be shocked if I saw that on a form. I really wouldn't, because I've seen just about everything else. They ask you the same question 4 or 5 different ways to see if in one of them you answer it wrong. And even though John is a good person and honest, I am not. So even though I told Scott, don't do it, I tell people to say you're not in a union, because we're a faculty organization that negotiates a contract. We're not a real union. We're not I'm the one who says no to everything. But John gets what he wants his way. I get what I want my way. But then I run into a number of people who, when they call me, say, why am I calling you? You're a community college teacher. You shouldn't even have had this phone call. There's Servici. And I go, thank you. And then I get the people who I have to explain Servici to, and then I have to talk to their supervisor, because they have not a clue what they're talking about and want me to go into appeals, right? It's a crapshoot.
I want to comment on the spring break pay. Actually, we are paid by course, not by time. So if you look at the contract, it's like in De Anza College, it's on a quarter system, right? 12 weeks. So you basically divide the total pay by 12 weeks. That's how much you get paid. So that means at the end of the quarters, you basically have paid off.
But
No
whether or
more
not
pay
you're
for the
paid for
spring break.
spring break is completely irrelevant to the question of whether or not you're eligible to get benefits for that week. It's about the fact that you are still having reasonable assurance of employment when the break is over. Therefore, you're not eligible regardless of any money issue. So whether or not or how you're paid for spring break is completely irrelevant to the fact that you are having reemployment assurance. So it's not relevant. You don't worry.
Well, it is
it's
relevant.
a sideshow about whether or not you're paid for spring break. It's the fact that you have assurance of employment after the break is over that makes you ineligible for benefits for that week. It's that simple.
That makes you eligible for it, but
no, it makes you ineligible.
Calculate the payment you're gonna get for that.
It's not about the money. It's about the fact that you are still working. You have not been laid off. You have reasonable assurance that you will have work at the end of the break. That disqualifies you. Money aside, doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter.
I understand. What I'm talking about is because they're gonna have to decide how much benefit you're gonna get for that week. You certified. So
no, you don't. No, you do not get paid for that week. You are not eligible. It's that simple. I'm sorry, you're not eligible. It's that simple. You don't get paid.
Stephanie's had her hand up. Stephanie, and then Scott again. So Victor, we appreciate you. If you can just put your hand up, that way people who want to speak, we see their hand. So Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry. I'm just jumping on here real quick in between meetings. One thing I just wanted to mention, just because of a lot of stuff I've been dealing with part-timers in the EDD lately, and when I say a lot, I mean a ton, and it's pretty much just a couple of districts that this is happening at. I've actually been having a lot of meetings with my contacts over at the EDD to see how we can prevent some of your applications from automatically going to a phone interview, because that is delayed. It was 26 weeks about a month ago. It's probably worse now. Two things are coming up. One, make sure you never ever check that you have reasonable assurance of employment, because one, you don't. I'm sorry, that's reality as a part-time faculty member, and it sucks. And two, that's automatically going to flag your application. The next thing is, when you check that you do not have reasonable assurance of reemployment, do not put a predicted start date, because that is flagging the system. And this is where so many applications are apparently getting caught up. So I know it seems, you're going to have this assignment coming up. You've been doing it for 15 years. That's just not how the EDD works, and they've had to really revamp their system because of all the fraud issues and the pressure from the legislature and just politics in general. It's a pain. It sucks. I know that. I'm so sorry you all have to go through this. I just wanted to bring that to all of your attention while you're having this discussion, since there are so many people in the room. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie. Scott, you had a hand up again.
Yeah, I wanted to speak briefly on what Victor was saying, because while you're right, Victor, we are paid as if it was per the class. And however, under the law, and I did some research on this and I talked to a couple of lawyers about it recently, if that were the actual way you are designated in the law, you're not getting minimum wage. And that's because the professional compensation minimum wage for a professional salaried type person is double what the hourly minimum wage is. And it doesn't matter how many hours you work. You have to be paid double the standard minimum wage for 2,080 hours a year. You're not getting that. Therefore, under the law in California, you are an hourly employee, regardless of the model they use to compensate you. And so that's the problem with, they trick you into thinking you're being paid for the course, but under the law, it's hourly. And so there is a weird thing there, and it always disturbs me, because when you fill out the EDD form, how many hours did you work?
That's not actually true, because some people are paid by load. My district is currently paid hourly. By the way, Thanksgiving week, I'm working. My classes are on Tuesday and Wednesday, so I don't have a week off. Lucky you, your classes were canceled that week. the issue is by holiday. The issue is about all of this is that we're moving to pay by load. So not all districts pay hourly.
But the problem, Douglas, is that while they might compensate you on that model, if they're actually paying you under the law by
But
load,
the other rule trumps
they're paying you less than minimum wage.
But
I recommend you
it's a
file
moot point. It's a moot point, Stephen, because as John says, the other rule then disqualifies you, and that is you're not on a break.
But we're talking
It's
about
a holiday.
they're talking about
It's
whether
like
they're following the
Christmas.
law.
Okay, I'm not working.
But the money that you make is ultimately aggregated. And so it really also is kind of moot as to how you're paid, because really they look at the total aggregate you're paid for 6 quarters. And that's what your 5 or 6 quarters, depending. And that is how your award is calculated. It's not about that last week you worked, even though it asks how much did you make in the last week and all that. That's a sideshow. Doesn't matter that much as long as you're in certain parameters. The algorithm doesn't spit your form out. Doesn't matter what you say. It's aggregated. So it doesn't really matter if you're paid hourly, minimum wage or not. It's just aggregated for the 3 months each time.
And the only reason.
Okay, all right, just a second. Just a second. That's enough.
There is a legal issue here.
Scott, I'm going to mute you,
It's
please.
very simple. Unless
Scott?
your district is paying you.
Thank you, Ray. The issue is this: if he wants to do that, fine. Our job is to tell you, please try not to, because we don't want you to end up in prison.
Can we move? We have someone with their hand up. Yadira, are you there?
Hi, everybody. It's so, I want to just thank everybody for the amount of knowledge and thank you to John and everybody, because it's something that, as part-times we don't know, and we might have just filled out like, yeah, let me apply for spring break. So it's all valuable information. I think I had a question, maybe all of you guys can answer, because I am a part-time at one of the colleges, and I also have a side assignment, which is 10 hours. Now, and during this side assignment, because I'm adjunct faculty, I cannot work past certain percentage. I mean, I have to do the work because it needs to be done, but I can't get paid the hours that I'm working. And my question is this: I was not offered a class this winter semester in January, but I'm still working my 10 hours of side assignment. Can I still apply for EDD?
It depends on how much you're getting paid.
By the way, you can always apply. You can always apply. I mean, you may get denied, but you can always apply. So the answer to your question is yes, you can apply. Yeah. Whether or not you get an award kind of depends on a bunch of numbers, and the worst that can happen is that you don't get any money after spending an hour doing the form. So I would encourage you, if there's any question, apply, be truthful with the money, and then see what happens.
Okay. We have 4 minutes left until we take a break for 15 minutes until 12 o'clock.
By the way, your unions put out handbooks, do workshops. Please go to your union.
I am. I'm actually I'm gonna connect with her today.
A moderator, can I share my screen for just a second?
We have 4 minutes. John.
Yeah.
We have 4 minutes until we take a break till noon.
Yeah, that means
So
yes,
if you feel
John.
like
Okay.
And then you just give me $5, we're good.
I just want to show you, for example, this here, can you see my screen?
Yep.
This is my state senator, John Laird's homepage. Look at the very top for ED assistance. ED, please complete this form. Takes you to the form that all the Democrats are using that you fill out to get help with EDD. My state representative, Mark Stone, big red button in the middle of the homepage, EDD assistance request form, same thing. If you go to your legislator's homepage, you may very well, if they're Democrat, see similar links. And that's where you want to send your folks to who get stuck in the Kafka-esque process of not hearing back from EDD. That's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Does anyone have any last minute question?
I love it. Contingent world, type it in to your search engine and find John's website. It's brilliant.
Raymond, back to you for 2 minutes.
Just a second, I was typing the last comment in chat. Yeah, okay. Yeah, me. So I was encouraging people to lie. If your assembly member, your legislator is not a Democrat, just find a Democratic district, nearby, and find like a storefront. Use that address when they fill out the help form. They won't look it up. They'll think you're constituent. They'll be happy to help you. Least they could do. All right, folks. I think it's been a very productive and helpful hour. I hope that most of you got your questions answered. If not, please, you can send them to me, and I will make sure that they get answered by sometime next week. And that would be, so that would resolve that. I just put my email in chat. So yeah, please feel free to contact me. Now we're going to take a break for about 15 minutes, and after the break, we're going to talk about parity. So for the break, I've decided to queue up what should be the anthem of part-time faculty, the Rolling Stones' wonderful number, "You Don't Always Get What You Want." And
Also,
so
everybody back in
please.
15 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was fun.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your time. Doug,
Thank you,
as
John
well.
and
Thank you,
Douglas.
John and Doug. Great program.
Yeah. It says to allow the speakers to introduce themselves, which I will do in a minute, but first I'm going to say nice things about each one of them. First, Jeff Michels is a negotiator and president of his union at somewhere. Yeah, I was going to say DBC, but that's not it. Contra Costa. And he's been the president of CCCI, which is the independent union organization, for the last 5-6 years. And he has been instrumental in speaking up for part-time people for as long as I've known him, 10 years. And he's been a very strong voice for part-time faculty. And if I might add, a very loud voice for them as well. So that's what I like about Jeff. Can't help but hear him. And he gets to sit at the grown-up table in Sacramento, which is really cool. So we have somebody sitting there that actually cares about us, doesn't just say so. And then there's Jessica Breheny. She is the president of the AFT at San Jose City College. And she and her colleagues on the negotiation team just negotiated a hell of a deal for all of us. But for part-time faculty, they did something that hadn't been done in a long time, and they actually thought about us, got us like a 15% raise. And yeah, it was like money from heaven and shit. So that was great. And then there's John Martin, who is sort of like Marley's ghost in the Sacramento Capitol. People see him in the hallways, they go the other way. He's been walking around sticking letters in legislators' boxes for 20 years or something. And he's the word was indefatigable. There we go. And yeah, he's relentless. And so John and Jeff have been at the state level for longer than anybody can imagine. And Jessica's been doing her share ever since she was old enough to join a union. So folks, take it away. We're going to go Jeff, Jessica, and then John.
Ray, I just wanted you to know, I think Phil, who is here, so I'm not sure, he's not spotlighted yet, but I think he's in the participants. So.
Oh, okay.
I don't see his name. Is he under a different name?
Does he have an alias?
He's here. I let him in. He's here.
Okay, there we go. I think it's time for us to hear Jeff.
All right. Well, I was just thinking, I haven't seen Phil in a while, and he looks really different now. But now that it says Jessica, I guess it's all explained to me. Well, so thank you very much, Ray, and thanks everybody. I appreciate your inviting me, and I'm going to try to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. Like all of us, I work in a system that basically rests on the exploitation of part-time labor and has done that since at least 1968, when Ed Code created contingent faculty. And it's gotten obviously worse and worse. And I want to both celebrate some of the victories and talk a little bit about where our advocacy has been effective, and really recognize leaders like Ray and Doug and FACC generally, and the role that advocacy has played in making progress, at least in some districts and in some areas. And I also want to talk a little bit about what the challenges are. I have been the lead negotiator in my district for the last 15 years, and I do represent districts around California, some of which have made terrific progress on the issue of pay parity, some of which have not. And I think I'm in a good position to sort of explain some of the complexities and some of the strategies that seem to have worked. But I want to start a little bit away from parity for a second, getting back to parity and making sure that we define it and are clear about what we're talking about. But just to kind of begin, One of the problems that we have with the issue is that it has been so many years of advocacy and such incremental, ineffective change that it actually undermines our advocacy. And I'm going to use office hours as an example because in some ways I think it's a much simpler idea and much clearer. Many of our districts, maybe most of our districts, do not compensate part-time faculty for full office hours. That makes no sense whatsoever from the standpoint of a student. Students need access to their faculty. So we go to the legislature and we say, hey, this is crazy. You have to fund office hours for part-time faculty. And the first thing legislators say to us is, we give you money to run your districts. Your districts should figure it out. If that's really a priority in districts, then negotiate that or work it out. Why aren't the colleges funding office hours? And it's a very good question. They're right. Except that the people that run our districts, unfortunately, are far enough removed from the classroom and under enough financial pressures that they seem to mostly be concerned with how to make ends meet. And everything that belongs to the system that they inherited that keeps cost low, they are reticent to change. So they don't want to pay part-timers adequately. They don't want to fund office hours. They don't want to fund healthcare for part-timers. They don't want to fund professional development because all that would add, undermine the bottom line. And so we somehow have to turn around and say to the legislature, it's not happening at the local level. So we need you to legislate it for us. We need you to create categorical money. And then what they do is they throw a little bit of money, often in weird ways, at the problem. And we know that, for example, with part-time office hours, one year maybe they'll put just a little bit of money, ongoing money, not enough to actually fund office hours for part-timers. And another year, this is a year where there's a lot of one-time money thrown at the problem, which is asinine because how are you going to spend one-time money on an ongoing problem? Districts wind up not spending the money or not sure how to spend the money. And then every year we go back to the legislature and we say, we got this problem. And the legislature says, well, we already dealt with it. I thought we dealt with it last year. Didn't we give you money just 2 years ago? So when we talk about part-time parity, we're actually talking about one of the more complicated issues from the standpoint of how dollars get spent. When we talk about parity, we are talking about essentially equal pay for equal work, which means, first of all, trying to isolate work so that we can make that comparison. What we're saying when we talk about parity is that a part-time faculty member and a full-time faculty member who have the same level of education and the same amount of experience or years in the system teaching the same class should be paid the same. We know that a full-time faculty member's pay includes a few other things, including usually mandatory office hours and some level of professional activity. Serving on committees, chairing committees, hosting clubs, doing curricular review, and to whatever extent part-time faculty may or may not be involved in those projects. So isolating pay per class maybe is a little bit complicated, but we started doing it in 2001, 2002, when our advocacy was successful at the state level, and we managed to get the state to actually give some categorical money to add to part-time pay. And at that time, they told every district, figure out what parity means in your district and start making progress towards it. Here's a little seed money. Again, not nearly enough money. And what happened there is districts defined parity. Many of them defined it at 75%, figuring that in a 40-hour work week for a full-timer, 30 hours is instruction and grading and whatever. 5 hours is 5 office hours, and then there's another 5 hours of professional obligation. I'm not sure that's accurate or fair, but that's how a lot of districts defined it. And then they gave us way too little money to get anywhere near it. And then in a lot of districts, that money became a separate line item on the check. If there was some local negotiation over parity, there started to be a line item where they would pay a little money towards parity. And one of the issues always in negotiating from the standpoint of labor organizations for part-time parity is that you are dividing your bargaining unit into full-timers and part-timers. And we know that the bargaining unit is already divided. We work in a two-tier system, and we know that our part-time faculty are ridiculously exploited compared to our full-time faculty. But we also know that everybody votes and thinks in their own self-interest. And full-timers, by and large, don't feel overpaid. By and large, they're living in their communities and always, raising their expenses based on their pay like everybody in the world, and they want raises too. And anytime the union tries to take money and say we're going to give it to one group and not to other groups, that is politically challenging. So every year that part-time parity incrementally began to get increased, which didn't happen in every district, but happened in some, the full-time faculty who voted for it and were on board started to say, hey, didn't we deal with parity already? How come part-timers get this extra thing every year, this parity money? So that gap between full-timers and part-timers in a lot of districts became a political problem. And it has continued to be a challenge in how we work on parity, seek money for parity. We know that there are overlapping interests. One of the key interests that we've pointed to in advocacy over the last 10 or 15 years is this overlapping interest where we would like to see a higher percentage of full-time faculty. We would like there to be more full-time opportunities for part-time faculty. We think students are better served by full-time faculty at one institution than somebody, working at 3 different colleges, piecing together 125% of a full-time job, trying to make ends meet, but not being tenured at a particular institution. And we've been fighting for that. And one of the main reasons we haven't been able to accomplish it is financial. Full-time faculty costs more than part-time faculty. So one of the arguments that we've made to the legislature and to full-timers is that if you raise the cost of part-time faculty, the savings between full-time and part-timers decrease, in which case it becomes less expensive to create tenure-track jobs. If we were paying everybody equitably, there would be a very, with full pro rata office hours, there would be that very small, maybe 10, 12.5% that full-timers make above part-timers, which makes it much less expensive to convert part-time jobs to full-time jobs. So there is an overlapping interest. Full-timers want more full-time colleagues. They want fewer, responsibilities as far as hiring and evaluations. And so in that sense, full-timers also have an interest in part-time pay going up. We know that there are other overlapping interests. We know that obviously the main motivation, I think, for teachers is serving our students well. And serving our students well means a professional, full service, equitable work environment. Our working conditions, as we say, are our students' learning conditions. So the level to which we support our part-time faculty is also the level to which we support our students. And those arguments succeed to some degree, but the negotiations have been complicated. So I just want to kind of put that broad picture out there as the first one speaking on this panel. And then I want to tell you a little bit the story in my own district, because we are on the verge, and I mean, I'm writing it up right now. We are, I hope, days or weeks away from moving our part-timers to 80% parity. And for us, that's going to be a large jump for a lot of people. We are also including in that 80% parity pro rata office hours, although they are not compensated separately. And there are several things that made that agreement possible, and yet it's a very difficult agreement. First of all, the way that we have made real progress in parity in my district in a couple of years, we've had lots of rhetorical progress where we commit to working on parity and where there's language about parity. And we've made some incremental progress in increasing salary schedules. But just one other piece to the complexity before I get to a small success is that my district, and my district is unusual in this respect, has paid part-timers hourly rather than pay per load. And there is, that creates incredible parity gaps, not only overall, but by assignment type. Because full-time load is based on the amount of preparation and grading we expect for an assignment, so that English composition loads a little higher than lecture, which loads a little higher than lab, which loads a little higher than activity. For part-timers that are paid hourly, the gaps for lecturers and English comp are huge. A full-timer teaching English comp is much, much better paid than a part-timer. Whereas that's less true in PE activity, for example, where there's more of a one-to-one, there's sort of less time being paid for prep and grading that a part-timer is not getting. Furthermore, because of the cockamamie ways our salary schedules have developed over the last however many years, parity is different at every step on the salary schedule. Every column and step has a slightly different discrepancy between full-time and part-time. So when you start trying to adjust in the name of equity, you could be making adjustments until your head explodes. And of course, that's partly because the full-time salary schedules are not equitable. And there's not equity between CTE faculty and humanists and scientists. And so it becomes an incredibly complicated project. We have made incremental adjustments in some creative ways that I won't get into here, but the politics of it is such that where we've made the most progress, it has been in multi-year agreements. That's what worked in my district. I've seen it work in other districts that I work with. Foothill de Anza is probably a good example. I don't know if they have faculty here, but they made incremental progress with multi-year agreements. Our multi-year agreement, this last agreement, was a 3-year agreement. And in year 1 and 2 of the agreement, there were across the board salary increases. We did actually distribute the money to part-time faculty a little bit unevenly so that lecture and English comp got a little more and activity got a little less. But basically, we were giving across the board raises. And then in year 3, all the money's going into parity. And our full-time faculty were able to support that because they wanted the raises in years 1 and 2. And by the time you get to year 3 and there's a formula and there's all this complicated language about parity, people don't understand the details all that much. They figure that's the 3rd year of the agreement. I'm going to vote for it. There's a few places where there's some overlap for us, including pay, for example, for summer, where full-timers, get a little taste in a way. But that 3rd year, the 3rd year is based on a formula and will address the parity problem, for us has magically come together in a year where the COLA is much higher than what we expected. So that where we were really aiming to go to 72% parity with an 80% parity goal, we're going to get all the way to 80%. And it's not this year, as it turns out. It's going to take us a year to implement it, but we will in one fell swoop achieve our parity definition. The other thing that we negotiated with the district that was a very strange thing to do is we negotiated down our parity definition. With full office hours, we would have said parity is 87.5%, right? 5 office hours. The district wanted us to come to 80%, and we made that compromise. And the reason we made the compromise was this, and if there are district officials listening, I'll be giving them a little inside baseball. But we figured we were so far below 80% that if it made the district happier to decide that 80% was parity, because see, they don't want this scenario where it's every year, what about parity? Every year, what about part-time office hours? Let's get the whole thing done in an agreement this time. Let's figure out what it costs, and if the formula doesn't work, we'll spread it out to the next year. But this is a priority, and we're going to get it done, and then we want to be done. And if they had set the goal higher, it just would have dragged on further and further. So what we decided to do was to lower our sights just a little. 80%, still pretty good for us. Again, we were mostly around 57, 60%. So it's a pretty good bump to get to 80% parity. And we figure we'll just reopen it a year or 2 from now. And we'll want to renegotiate the parity definition. Just the fact that we launched it at 80 doesn't mean we can't go back to them and say, you know what, we actually think it would be more equitable at 87.5. And by the way, counselors and librarians, that doesn't really make sense to have them be at 80% parity. All those nuances, we figured there's nothing that prevents us from reopening that in a couple of years, which I'm sure we will. So for us, we were able to sort of take a step down in order to make more progress. And I think that was a linchpin in some ways in actually getting the district to agree, is that they saw sort of an end in sight. And our advocacy never really ends. We're constantly trying to improve pay and equity. So I don't want to just go on too long. We've got a lot of people to talk, but I just wanted to say that that's the biggest challenge for me, has always, and I think for most of our districts, has always been trying to find those overlapping interests, trying to get the bargaining unit as a whole on board. And then I just really want to come back to celebrating people like Ray and Doug and John Martin, who have done such an amazing job of keeping part-time issues in the foreground, FACC particularly, because it really has taken, I mean, I see a number of districts in Bay Area, and I'm part of the Bay Faculty Association, so we get together and talk. And there are a number of districts now in the Bay Area. Foothill de Anza is, I think, at 82.5%. Peralta has reached their parity goal. Contra Costa is about to reach our parity goal. There are a number of districts that have made some progress in this, and it has taken decades. It has not been, let's get into negotiations and we're going to fix it. It has been wearing down the legislature, wearing down administrators, and that requires a really sustained, educated, part-time voice. So we're really lucky that we've had people like Ray and Doug and John who are not just strong voices in the Capitol, but who've been in the Capitol making these arguments now for decades. And I think that's just incredibly important. So I really appreciate that FACC does their part-time symposium every year and are raising these issues. It's very frustrating from the standpoint of part-time faculty that we haven't been able to fix some of these problems already, but we have made slow progress. And I do think that matters, and it is starting to pay off. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to hearing everybody else.
I have a question.
Jessica, I think Jessica's next. Please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Was there a question though?
Just a brief one, but I'll wait. I'll wait.
Let's let the panel speak, and then we can take questions.
Jessica, you sound a little tinny. Is there any quick fix?
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure. Do I still?
We can live with it, but it's just a little tinny.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll try. I'll try to be brief, not to hurt your ears. And Phil, if you want to jump in also. So I'm from AFT 6157, San Jose-Evergreen Federation of Teachers, and I'm the president, and Phil, who is our executive director. And we worked on our last bargaining for the contract, and we were able to get pay parity that had been at 68.38%, moved to 70.72% for this year. And then, and also, like Jeff, we did a multi-year contract, which I do think really helped us with this, with a plan to move in July 2022 to 73% pay parity. So we do have a long way to go, but we were really happy to be able to get that movement. It hadn't budged in years. Our definition of pay parity in our contract is 100%, and we have language in there that starting at 85%, professional duties and office hours would be prorated into that, and there's a formula for that. But Phil, do you want to talk a little bit about how we worked on that in the negotiations team and our strategy around organizing that?
Sure. So when I came in to be the AFT 6157 executive director, I had heard from previous bargaining team members and the then president of our union that what we do is something called social justice bargaining. And I thought that sounded great. And I was eager to find out what this meant. And what this meant, I found out, was we would go negotiate salary. And as an example, let's say we negotiated 5% for this year. The social justice bargaining would kick in, all right? So we would get the 5%. And then as the union, we would then decide what part of that 5% is applicable to everybody, and what part of that 5% do we want to shift over specifically to part-timers. And I remember when I first heard of this, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. That's very nice. You know, we have the social justice bargaining thing. We want to, you know, uplift our part-timers more, and so on and so forth. And then, you know, some other issues happened, and I got into the job more and more. And then I had more time to really kind of marinate on this idea. And I thought, wow, we call it social justice bargaining, but in the end, it's actually, I think, incredibly unfair and incredibly unjust all around, right? Because when we negotiate a 5% raise, the classified personnel Me Too's that. The district automatically Me Too's that for management, right? And so everybody else, every other constituency group in our district gets the 5%. Guess who doesn't actually get the 5%? right? It would be faculty, because now we're divvying it up. No other constituency groups does this, right? Like the classifieds don't say, as an example, well, the janitors get, the custodians get like, the 5%, and then we'll get the 3%, and then we'll take 2% out for, I don't know, another group within their constituency group, right? They don't have to split that. When they get 5%, they get 5%. And so part of our strategy and part of our goal going into this round of bargaining was actually to change that. We don't believe that achieving equity should come on the backs, like for all faculty, right, should come on the backs of faculty. It's the district's responsibility to actually, right, raise the, the pay parity level for associate faculty. So we went in there with a specific plan, and we just kept at it. We negotiated raises for everybody. And then we said, okay, now let's talk parity, because this is your job, right? This is the district's responsibility to do. And we were actually able to do this. Just a little bit of numbers. We were able to negotiate for 3 year on a 3-year contract, and this is the first actual 3-year contract we've had, I think, in our district. We used to just open every year, and we were always bargaining kind of like a year after the contract expired. So we are now kind of historically got a 3-year deal, and for the first time in our union's history, we have a contract that goes beyond right this year, and we will from now on be bargaining prospectively. So we were able to get, let me see, I have the numbers down. I think we will get at least, everyone will get at least a 12.5% raise over the 3 years. And it's possible that we would end up getting like a 14.7% because we are a basic aid district. So our funding comes from property taxes. So in that 3rd year, we've linked it, right, to how well the property tax performs, right? It's a 3% minimum guarantee, and it could go up to 5% depending on where the property tax data point for us lands. So that's for everybody. And then we went and got an additional commitment from the district. We wanted to try to get them to move much, like incrementally much quicker than I think they really were ready to do, and maybe even able to do, right? I think the original proposal was we wanted to get our associate faculty to 80% parity by the end of the 3-year contract. They really kind of pushed back on that. They also didn't even really want to do like a percentage. So instead what they said is, let's do this. We will commit $1 million for the remainder of the contract term, which was 2 years, right? And so it basically got split to 500,000 for this year. And so 500,000 for this year, and then $500,000 for the 2022-2023 year. And so what that number became was an additional 2.34% raise for our associate faculty this year, and then an additional 2.28% for next year. So as this broke down, what this meant was associate faculty got 5% for the previous year. This year, they are going to get a 6.34% raise, and then the coming year, they're going to get a 5.28%, possibly 7.28% raise, depending on where our property taxes land, right? And so it's entire. I mean, they're going to get an assured 17.6% raise, right, with the parity money built in over the year of the life of the contract, and they can possibly get up to just a shade under 20% in total if that 3rd year, we get that good property tax rate, and we can, the district can bump it all the way up to the 5%. That's kind of, I mean, that really was the approach we had, right? Which was, we wanted to separate this. Parity means parity. And parity doesn't mean we can, it should come on the backs of everyone else, right? So we were able to get the district for the first time to do more than what Jeff Michels called earlier, like a rhetorical commitment, right? Because in our contract, the language for parity, the definition for 100% parity has been in there for like some 12, 15 years. So 100% is our definition of parity. But we've moved very, very slowly, right, towards that. And at some point, the district negotiator had actually said, "Oh, when the state gives us some money, we'll, for parity, we'll do it." Like, no, our funding comes mostly from property taxes, right? There's no need for us to wait for the state to give us parity money to do this, right? So we were very determined. We were very happy to be able to do this. I will say, our district chief negotiator for this round was rather reasonable, So. We did have to push and fight a little bit, but it wasn't like a thing where we had to, create a contract action team. We didn't have to go, do demonstrations at the board trustees meeting. they did come in with a much lower offer initially, but after we turned out about 6 faculty members to talk about why it's too low given inflation and everything else, the next time we had a bargaining session, they upped the numbers like pretty quickly. So it wasn't like an all-out like pit fight, right? But we are happy because we did get some historical things achieved, right? It is like for the first time, it wasn't just like a rhetorical commitment to parity. They actually set funds aside, right? And they put dedicated money aside that didn't come from the overall, raise for everybody. So we're pretty happy about that. The other thing that we were able to get that I think also helps our associate faculty is we actually got our district to agree to lecture lab parity for the first time in our district history for science and health science labs. And so the associate faculty in those areas, right, typically, right, and we know how this works, full-time faculty go through and they pick their classes. So if you're teaching like a physics or a bio, class that has a lecture component and a lab component, that lab component like involves a lot of work and probably a lot more hours than the actual lecture section. And the lecture section gets paid more. So full-time faculty members often would have taken the lecture side of it, leaving the lab side of it, right, for associate faculty. So now associate faculty is doing the longer lab hours, right, the setup, the tear down possibly, right, and then getting paid less for it. Now, once we did the lecture lab parity thing, it loaded them the same. In many instances now, full-time faculty aren't going to be able to do like the lecture stuff, just the lecture stuff, and it's opened up more opportunity, right? Never mind just the equal pay on that end, right? But it's opened up more opportunity for our associate faculty to actually get some of those lecture classes too, instead of simply picking up the labs. And I think that's about it that I've got.
I can also just add to that in terms of how the bargaining went this round. We do have a couple of members of our board of trustees who feel very strongly that the pay difference between part-time and full-time faculty is just inherently unfair. So they were extremely helpful for us. And the other thing is that we agreed to separate out the full-time faculty overload pay schedule, which was the same as the associate faculty pay schedule, in order to get the pay parity applied just for part-time faculty. So the district said, we have this amount of money, we want to give it to part-time faculty only, and we said fine. So that got separated out also, and that also helped us. So we were able to agree to target where that money was going to go.
We did get a few full-timers who got upset about that. Why is my overload now paid less or at a lesser rate than the associate faculty thing? But parity, right? Dedicated funds means dedicated funds, right? Yeah. So
I'd like to step in just for a second before we get to John. And I teach at San Jose City College in addition to De Anza, and there are a lot of part-time faculty over there walking around with this stunned look on their face because suddenly people are actually doing something for us. The previous iterations of the negotiation teams, there wasn't even a rhetorical flourish there. They just didn't give a shit. And so it's nice to have somebody actually tell you, well, we care about your concerns and we're going to deal with them, and then actually turn around and deal with it in Heart Attack City. So thanks, guys. Phil, Jessica.
Thank you.
All right, here's John Martin, chair of CPFA, California Part-Time Faculty Association, and he is as old as he looks.
Thank you, Raymond, and your earlier comments about myself. It's been a while since I've been walking the halls of Sacramento, but as soon as next year begins, I'll be doing it again. Jeff Michels had really took the wind out of my sails, and kudos to him for talking about the exploitation. Raymond, can I share screen? Can I be allowed to share screen here?
Yes, Jessica, that's above my pay grade.
Okay, so I want to share something with everybody here that has really, really gone under the radar. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Every year for the last 10, 12 years, I've been in Sacramento. I've been highlighting this issue about the budget language. And if you look under today's budget on page 698 and 704, if you want to email me, I'll send it to you. And I cut and pasted up here. Schedule 12, 400 million, 400,000 for health insurance, 24 million for part-time faculty compensation. And this is what gets me. And I've been talking to everybody from FACCC to CTA to CFT, CCCI. I've talked to numerous people and it's still not have been changed. And that is, if the yellow highlight says here, if the community college district achieves parity between compensation for full-time faculty and part-time faculty, funds received pursuant to this provision may be used for any educational purpose. Now, as we know, administrators are very, very creative when they get money from the state of California. I have complained repeatedly that there's no accountability or transparency on this language of $24.9 million for part-time pay compensation. Either you get rid of it or modify it, saying they need to show proof. Oh, we've reached parity. Well, trust but verify, as Ronald Reagan said in the 1980s when he was dealing with the Soviet Union. I cannot for the life of me, cannot get legislators to understand this one line is very detrimental to us. And who knows what sinister moves that the district use this money for. And if they even get it. So I think this is step one, is take care of the doggone budget language that says, and it gives free rein for administrators to say, oh, you've reached parity. Really? Well, show us. Show us in a document saying you've reached it. Now, I've gone to the chancellor's office on this. They say, oh, it costs too much money. Oh, gee, how many times have you heard that? Because it costs money for a district, individual district, not only put out office hours, that was another issue with AB 310 that FACCC sponsored, and it fell by the wayside, to ask them to put on paper or an email, no paper involved, say trees, what they use that money for, and rather than really achieve parity. So I think if we're going to talk about parity, we need to look at the budget language that claims that $24.9 million has been dispersed to these districts. And districts, who gets it? Did they reach parity? How much did they use it when they applied? And where's the accountability? And this is something that really bothers me. And I cannot get anybody to help CPFA. CPFA does it can. I can do what I can. But if people say no or indifferent or they got other priorities, then there's not much I can do. Except scream and kick and holler. Legislators I talked to, oh yeah, that seems reasonable. Yes, yes. But it's just rhetorical message that I get from it. I know Raymond and I have gone to Sacramento together to point this out, and nothing happens. And I think this is one frontline activism that we could use to make sure that the money is spent where it's supposed to be spent, accountability, and we know that the chancellor's office and the district, most of these debt codes, there's absolutely zero accountability and zero transparency for the most part. So that's my piece. Jeff and Phil and Jessica touched on another aspect of pay parity, which is all good and done. One little tidbit at Butte College, and this is what everybody may think about. Every time the state of California have COLA, it is automatically given to part-time faculty. Automatically. There's no discussion. We don't have to negotiate it. We get whatever that parity is for that year. And this year, and the other thing we do this 20 school average. And for several years with this automatic COLA, we've been given part-time lecturers the bulk of the money because our 20 school average was way below. The counselors and activity instructors, they're way above lecturers. For the first time, I'm proud to say, all three different pace people on our scale, lectures, hourly, or activity instructors like lab instructors, PE, and counselors, and now all equal, maybe off by 1%. And so we're very proud of the fact that we're able to build the lectures up to the same level with our hourly and counselors. So we are now have reached parity among our own class of associate faculty. And we call ourselves associate faculty at Butte. So that's very important. And the other thing we were able to do, and we just agreed to, is to separate the salary schedule for teaching. In other words, full-timers have their own salary schedule when they teach over, which we object to, but the district says, well, we can't negotiate that away because the full-timers think that's their perk and there's nothing we can do about it. But at least we're able to separate our salaries. So all the COLA that we get is us. Full-timers don't get it. And so they have to negotiate their own salary. So I know we're running out of time here. Raymond's turn next. But anyway, those are the things that I'd like to report out. Thank you.
Raymond, are you with us? I think our panel has finished.
Unmute again and talking to myself. Okay, we have just a few minutes for questions. Have people had their hands up? I haven't seen any, but yeah, Jeff has his hand up. Let's take a question from Jeff.
Well, I just want to respond to something that was put in the chat, and I see Donna's hand up too, so I think it was her comment originally. But I think especially at districts that have made progress on pay parity, we have to begin expanding the definition of parity. I think whoever put it in the chat, when we talk about compensation, we talk about total compensation. And I know that the unions, particularly CCCI and CFT, are talking about legislation that would create some kind of a statewide pool. We're trying a new sort of idea, just getting our feet wet, but trying a new idea for how we might provide health benefits and by extension, maybe other benefits to part-time faculty in a different way than we have through individual districts. But I do think it doesn't make sense to talk about pay parity without also talking about healthcare. And obviously there are other connected issues. Job security is incredibly important. Somebody put in the chat, it doesn't do me any good if they give me a raise if then they cut one of my classes and I'm only get to teach one. Our part-timers lack job security in the system. Anytime you talk about increasing the 67% cap or getting rid of it, you talk about adding full-time positions. You're also potentially talking about losing part-time jobs, and those balances and how we talk about them are really important as well. So I'll let Donna ask a question, but I just wanted to say, I think that transition, it's kind of like what I was saying, where we set a little bit of a lower goal in order to achieve it. In some ways, I feel like we've been doing that for a decade and talking about pay parity, and it probably is time to start talking about parity in a much broader way, because that's really the goal, is to make all of our jobs in community college living wage jobs that have security and benefits, and that people want to go into this profession and stay in this profession and can afford to.
Donna, go ahead and ask your question, and if anyone else has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. I do appreciate that. I put in the chat also something about non-credit and disability education. These people are a third tier that never get talked about. And it's time that we recognize that there are part-time faculty that actually make half of what a part-time lab load pays throughout the state. And yes, they do not have to give it final exams. They do not do grades, but they have to register all their students. They have to do all kinds of extra things, plus teach 1/3 more hours, and again, get half the pay. What are you going to be looking at, especially unions, for these people who are very deserving? I've been teaching 33 years, only 3 years in this particular part of this non-credit area. And I will tell you that many of these teachers have been there for 30, 40 years, and they make so little, it's pathetic. What are you doing for them?
Jessica.
Oh, can I just say, this came up in our district about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And we were able to stave off the third tier. So we ended up, we don't actually have a separate pay scale for non-credit faculty, which I realized later how lucky we were that we were able to do that. One of the things that came up is that the districts are being paid the same for the non-credit courses as they are for the credit courses, unless I'm misinformed about that. But that was our argument at the time, and that's remained our argument, and it hasn't come up since. So we're extremely lucky. That's my answer to that question.
Thank you. Alexis, your hand is up next. And again, if you have a question, please raise your hand with the Zoom icon so that we can see it. Yeah, yours is up, Ornette. I see that yours is up. So you can put your physical hand down. You have your Zoom icon. So Alexis, you're up, but you're on mute. Hun. Alexis, you're on mute, so we can't hear you. You're still on mute.
There, sorry.
Here we
okay. You can hear me now, yeah. Yeah, I noted that in the chat that total compensation for full-time faculty, and I note that total compensation is a district term used when they do studies on faculty pay in comparison to market basket pay for figuring out faculty pay, full-time faculty pay, and it's calculated based on pay and benefits. And parity, pay parity should absolutely include benefits. I mean, there's just, I mean, to simply state that, oh, we should consider looking at that is rather an outrage after seeing for 30 plus years a slow crawl to parity, pay parity for part-time faculty that will never be reached if health benefits are not included, because health benefits are going to go up, up, up. That's the main sticking point in any negotiation right now at the table for full-time faculty is holding the line on their benefits. Trust me, I've seen it. And you know, we're so far behind. If we're only looking at pay, hourly pay, then, you know, we're not talking about parity, folks. So, you know, I think all this kind of scrambling around about it is, you know, is hollow, and until it's determined that we have, you know, benefits, health benefits included. That's all. Thank you.
Stephen.
Yep. So, I'm sorry, I forgot how to put the hand icon up. Yeah, I mean, certainly what Jeffrey was saying is, you know, is central. I mean, the focus on pay parity and what was it Jessica or who was just talking? I forget. Is it the woman that was just talking? I mean, clearly that's central as well, health benefits. But a third factor, and anybody can chime in and help me with this, but I think it's a subtle one, and it's sometimes I've been able to do well, you know, hustling 2 classes here, 2 classes there, but it's having no office. Now, that's not about, you know, status envy, but the amount of stress that it causes, right? We all know that, you know, we've seen people with SUVs and they have a de facto office in their trunk. You know, it's just lugging stuff around. And
okay, we're cutting into the next panel's time. So if we could wrap this up, please.
We have Ornette with one question as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just think that is an important thing that nobody has brought up. office, having an office. It's like being a coach or an athlete and not having a locker.
Thanks, Stephen. Raymond, do we have time for one more question or no?
Sure, Arnie, go ahead. Quickly,
Okay, thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Dana. I would like to just say this quickly. Jessica, if you have any information on a non-credit that receives the exact same pay and the exact same workload, the exact same benefits, I would love to see it, because what the state chancellor has been saying is with enhanced non-credit, they said, oh, the pay is the same. But I looked at so many contracts. The City College of San Francisco contract, San Diego, Mount San Antonio. I haven't looked at the answer. The workload is very different. The workload is almost, anywhere from 2 times to 2.5 times the workload to get the same pay. And so I think, again, that's why in Los Rios, we have been pushing back again and again. We do not want non-credit that will create another tier of faculty. So when they tell you the pay is the same, let's look at everything that comes with that. They always say the pay is the same, but they don't say the workload is twice or 2.5 times. And also benefits are different. And basically, and when you teach ESL, which is a department that has been put in the non-credit category again and again and again and again. And I teach ESL and I'm an immigrant. And I think it's just a degrading act that the whole system has put on our immigrant population and faculty to teach immigrants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know that several of you have last minute comments. We'll take some time at the end of the next thing for people to get what they need to say said. We're not going to throw anybody out until you've had your chance to speak, but I would like to introduce our next panel so that we can move forward here. And that would be, and this can be interesting because I know most of us, we have no idea what the heck this is about, WP and GPO. I was trying to think of something that would make sense with, but it was everything I came up with was obscene, so I'm not gonna do that anymore. So next it's Doug and Doug and David.
David and Jennifer.
There we go. Okay, I'm misreading my notes. Like I said, I was going to read next week. All right, David, if you'd introduce yourself, please, and tell us what the heck you're talking about, that'd be great.
I'd be happy to. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Baker from the California Retired Teachers Association. And also, as we all know, from FACCC and CalSTRS, Jennifer has been in lots of places helping part-time faculty over the years. So she's just a great ally. There's Jennifer. There she is. And she's going to show a PowerPoint. In fact, she's sharing her screen now. The only reason I'm here is I'm a huge fan of Jennifer Baker, but also we're talking about the WEP and the GPO, and my inclusion involvement is that I'm working as hard as I can with CalRTA as a member, since I'm retired, to help get rid of the WEP and the GPO because it really hurts us. And I want to show you, you will all get a letter from Social Security that looks like this. And it says what you're going to make a month. And you can see mine says I'll make $540 a month from Social Security. That was in 2016. When I finally retired in 2019, they sent me my $99 a month from Social Security. So be careful when you get the letter from Social Security telling you what you're going to get. It could be a lot different from that. And now we have Jennifer Baker, who's going to explain why that happens and how hopefully we can get rid of it. So Jennifer, welcome this afternoon. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much, my friend. And I think the last time I've seen many of you, none of us had gray hair. So it's been a while, but it's great to be back in a different capacity. And I'm happy to share some really important information that some of you may be aware of, some of you may not. Some of this is going to make you mad. So usually when I start to talk about these issues, I tell people, if you have high blood pressure, now might be a good time to quickly take your medication because I'm probably going to make you mad with some of this information that you're going to hear about regarding these Social Security offsets. But what I want to do today is really give you an overview, talk about what the windfall elimination provision is, how did it become law, and how are you impacted. I'm also going to be doing the same regarding the government pension offset. Why and how did it become law? Again, how are you impacted? I'm going to go over what the cost of actually repealing these two unjust offsets are. And I'm also going to talk to you about what are the bills that are floating through Congress right now, which bill includes which provision or both. I'm also going to do a little bit of a political speculation on which bills, if any or all or none, may likely have the chance of moving forward to try to get a sense of where this Congress is, and also let you know what the California Retired Teachers Association and a number of other organizations are doing to try to repeal both the windfall elimination and government pension offsets, as well as what you can do. So there is quite a bit of technical information. I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I'm a little worried we might run out of time. And I want to make sure that there's enough time to answer a few questions. So first, let me start out by talking about the windfall elimination provision, also known as the WEP. Usually most people talk about these by their acronyms. So the WEP was created in 1983 as part of Social Security amendments. They were part of a broad package because, as many of you may know, when Congress passes a bill, it's not a single subject bill. It has everything under the kitchen sink in it. And so it was merely one component in that kitchen sink bill, which was signed by then President Reagan. What they were trying to do is remove what they saw as an unintended advantage, or a windfall, as they put it. But the problem was they didn't realize that they were actually harming individuals that had actually earned benefits. It's a national problem because there are a number of individuals that are impacted. And as you all know, people don't always stay still. They often move to other states. So you may be impacted by the WEP because you live in California, but when you retire, you may decide to move to another state. That doesn't eliminate you being impacted. So we do have people in all 50 states that are impacted by the windfall elimination provision. According to Social Security Administration, as of 2019, we had close to 2 million Social Security beneficiaries who were impacted by the WEP. Most of them were retired. And what this does is impact someone who worked in state or local government, but non-Social Security covered employment. So if you work for a community college, you are in the and here's where it gets a little tricky, and this is what caused me to first learn about retirement issues. If you work over 50%, you're automatically put into CalSTRS, the California State Retired Teachers, California State Retired Teacher System. And what's important about this for part-time faculty is some of you may be in CalSTRS, some of you may not. And so it can get very complicated and very unique given your part-time status, and you may not realize you're in CalSTRS in one district and you are in PARS in another, or even Social Security in another. So it is very important to know what retirement plan you are for each district. But if you are in the CalSTRS defined benefit plan, you are impacted by the windfall elimination provision because you don't pay Social Security benefits. Districts don't do that for at the K-12 side. It's for certificated employees, but districts do pay that for your classified employees. So classified employees are not impacted by the WEP the same way in K-12. Certificated are, or that could be the same way at the community college level. So it is important to find out that status. It does get tricky, but these impact the earned Social Security benefits that you had. So for David's example, he obviously contributed to Social Security during the course of his career, but by virtue of being in the CalSTRS system, that triggered him being impacted by the windfall elimination provision. You can't you can't, let's say you worked for a year and you were in CalSTRS and then you find out about this and say, oh, forget it. Let me go leave the system and go do something else so I can prevent myself from being impacted. The bad news is you're impacted. There's nothing you can do to now eliminate this from impacting your Social Security benefits per se. So it is important to realize that, and that's one of the reasons why it's very important to talk to counselors before you retire, your own financial advisor. You do want to make sure that you talk to Social Security before you retire. And when you talk to them, you need to say, I am an educator in the state of California. I am a member of the CalSTRS system, and I may be impacted by the WEP and the GPO. Not all our counselors automatically know this. I would say it's kind of akin to, I know there have been systemic issues with the EDD for years. And so it's so important that you let the person that you're talking to understand that you may be impacted by this, because they may give you a different number for what you can expect, such as the number that David found out he was actually going to get. So the way you're going to get impacted by the WEP depends on the total number of years that you have. So the maximum reduction that they can take from you is half of your amount, but that reduction is capped. As of 2020, the cap is $480. If you have more than 20 years of substantial coverage, so if you paid into Social Security for full-time 20 years, you start to see a reduction in the overall amount of offsets that you will receive. If you have 30 years of full-time work, the WEP will not impact you. So I did include a breakdown of what these numbers are, and I did make sure that they were updated as of 2020. So you can see that, let's say you had 23 years, instead of having to have $480 reduced, your Social Security check would be reduced by $336. So there are different ways to calculate your WEP penalty, and I wanted to make sure that we provided you the tools that you need to help figure this out for yourself if you think that you are impacted. And so I did include the link to this website here, where you can work to try to calculate what your WEP penalty would be. So there is a formula, and there is a factor in that formula for you to look at what percentage of the WEP may erode into your overall retirement check. There is a second provision, because why kick you once when you're down when the federal government can kick you twice? And so the second way the federal government has a way of thanking you for the work that you're providing to our future generations is by not only impacting the amount of Social Security benefits that you earned and you paid into, but also those of your spouse. So if you have a spouse and you outlive your spouse, when an individual passes, let's pretend we don't have the GPO. When someone passes, you typically then begin to get the Social Security earnings for your spouse. There's a death benefit, and you're able to collect those Social Security earnings. But if you performed in the public service, what will happen is those earnings of your spouse can be reduced or eliminated. So one of the horrible situations from being an educator in the state of California is not only do you see a Social Security reduction in your benefits, but the benefits that your spouse earned and paid into can also be reduced and eliminated, but it's when they pass. And the dilemma is typically when that happens, the individual is already in a pretty precarious financial situation. They're having to deal with the loss of a spouse. And then on top of that, they then find out that they're not going to have the financial security that they thought they were going to have, because they're going to be penalized. So this was created in 1977. It was also signed into a very comprehensive law that was signed by then President Carter. One of the horrible ironies is that there are a number of other individuals who never worked. So there are a number of spouses who never worked. And when their partner dies, they get their full Social Security benefits. But the irony is that folks in California, as well as 14 other states, are impacted by the government pension offset. So I did list them here, and you will see that it does range across the nation. It is not every state. And that is one of the challenges that we have at the federal level, because folks and representatives from the states that are not impacted say, well, why should we care? And so we really have had an uphill battle in trying to get this integrated into a national priority as opposed to a priority of specific states. So we did put together a little chart that really tries to depict different scenarios. So different individuals that are or are not impacted by the WEP and the GPO to really try to get a sense of the unjustness of this system. And what it really does is it shows you in some cases. So in the first entirely blue section, if you have a spouse that worked outside the home, they get 100% of their Social Security benefits. The earner would get a little over $2,700 a month. The spouse would get 100% of their Social Security, or 50% of their eligible monthly amount. That monthly amount would be a little over $4,100. When the spouse dies, the surviving spouse gets 100% of that benefit. And so the monthly total that individual is getting is specified, and then they'll get their spousal benefit as well. Ironically enough, this just happened to my mother-in-law last month, and I was trying to find out if any way she was impacted by the WEP and the GPO, and it seems like she is. Ironically enough, she had worked in the prison system, and there are other public employees in California that are also impacted by this, not just education. So fortunately, I had enough information to be dangerous and helped her to navigate that Social Security system. But there are others who, for example, a stay-at-home spouse, didn't have higher education, didn't pay into Social Security, but they're able to get the monthly Social Security benefits. You also have, I'm going to kind of go to the public school teacher column. They earn their funds, their spouse passes, but the amount that they're actually going to get from their spouse is zero. So, you know, the horrible irony is that here you're contributing, you're paying, and another individual who was just a stay-at-home spouse, they're able to get funds. And so it is truly unjust. And we are working to try to change the conversation so we can affect some change. Some of the impacts of the GPO really are some of the issues I talked about earlier, where it really deprives the spouse of those survival benefits. And what makes it very difficult is that you've already lost half of the income from that individual. You're dealing with the costs of burial, a number of other issues trying to figure out, can you still continue to pay a mortgage or bills if you still have that? Under the GPO, the amount of spousal benefits can often be reduced by 2/3 of the amount. And that's, if you compare it to CalSTRS, it can be a huge chunk of your retirement check that's being taken out if you were counting on Social Security. When the GPO was initially created, they were trying to address what they believed at that time to be a major federal civil servants issue. They thought that federal civil servants were double dipping, they were getting too much, you shouldn't be able to get Social Security and another defined benefit pension. This was often at a time where we started to see the erosion of defined benefit plans in the private sector. There was a huge effort to try to eliminate them. That's a whole nother webinar. I could do at a different time, but that mindset really permeated many of the decisions that were made at the federal level. And this was one of the systemic changes that worked its way into a bill. And so the real dilemma is that it really hits the individuals hardest who have really provided a lifetime career of public service, such as teachers. And ironically enough, 72% of CalSTRS members are women. So this is a women's issue as well. And it's very unfortunate that we have to deal with it. And we've been dealing with it for decades now. There is hope on the horizon. I always keep my fingers crossed. I did want to let you know there are a number of bills that are out there, and there is a whole political context, shall I say, to each of these bills. The first and most prominent bill is HR 82, and that is being carried by Representative Rodney Davis and Representative Spainberger of Virginia. And this bill is a straight up repeal of both the WEP GPO. We are a huge supporter of this bill, as are a number of other organizations. This is truly a bipartisan bill. You have a significant amount of members from both sides of the political aisle. This would be an easy issue to try to move forward. If only we didn't have to deal with that 290 rule, co-sponsor rule. And what that is a rule that you have to have 290 co-sponsors in order to have a bill brought up on the floor. Right now, I believe as of last week, we were 237. I think we may have gotten one or two. So we're just shy of 240 co-sponsors right now, which is actually very good. We're continuing to make pushes. We just had a delegation in DC a few weeks ago trying to get focusing on representatives from other states that are also impacted, such as Georgia and Texas, trying to get additional representatives of Congress to sign on. There are a few other bills out there I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. We did recently have HR 5723 that was introduced by Representative Larson of Connecticut. This is I will call it a very comprehensive hodgepodge bill. This does not only include weapon GPO, it includes a number of provisions. I would imagine, based on the issues that I know that many of your organizations are focused on, you would probably like a number of those components. But the components that we're only focusing are the repeal of the WEP and the GPO. So CalRTA also does support that bill. I am hearing that there may be a push to actually bring this bill up and to try to move it forward. Now, let me say that it is possible it may be part of a partisan discussion. Right now, only Democrats have signed on to the bill. My understanding is it could be part of a broader comprehensive package that Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats are working to try to move forward. If it can move forward and can pass the House, and they can work to also get that cleared through the Senate, we're scot-free. The dilemma is we don't know at the end of the day, are there going to be the necessary votes to actually get that off the floor and then actually push these provisions also through the Senate. So I am watching this very closely because it would not be a good situation if we had it get out of the House and then just sit and then that's the end. And then have folks say, well, we did our job. And so we're not going to take up HR 82 or other issues. So we do feel that it's very important to make a continued push to say we want to ensure that we do have the issue of WEP GPO repeal voted on the House floor, and we want to ensure that it moves forward. We have a couple of other bills in the House, HR 2337. The Public Servants Fairness Act by Representative Neal, who also sits on the Ways and Means Committee. Unfortunately, this bill only includes a modified version, a repeal of the WEP. It does not include the elimination of the GPO. And just earlier this month, HR 5834 by Representative Brady was introduced, and this only includes the repeal of the WEP. It does not include the GPO. We have not taken support positions on either of those bills because we do believe that we cannot afford to move solely on the WEP while not eliminating the GPO, specifically because that has such a devastating impact on spouses who also disproportionately are women. So one of the messages that we have included is a quote from Abigail Adams: "Gentlemen, don't forget the ladies." And so we've been working on those conversations. There is also a companion measure in the Senate, Senate Bill 1302, the Social Security Fairness Act, and that is being co-authored by Senator Brown as well as Senator Collins. And so we have been having conversations with a number of representatives. We have contacted every single member and met with just about every single member of the California delegation. I should say all of those that were willing to meet with us. There were a few outliers, but not that many. And we did have both of our California senators, both Feinstein and Padilla, are signed on as co-sponsors. So the good news is there are a lot more individuals talking about WEP GPO than there actually have been in a number of years. And we have many more vehicles out there that are dealing with WEP GPO than we've seen in years. That's a good problem to have. But the reality is some other issues tend to trickle into the conversation. One of the biggest issues and one of the biggest roadblocks that we've had is folks say it costs too much. It's just so much money. So what we try to do is really break it down and say, let's take a little deeper dive into the cost of Social Security and the cost of eliminating the WEP GPO. So when you look at the total amount of annual covered payroll that we're utilizing for the Social Security system, we're talking about over $7 trillion. The annual cost of Social Security is around $885 billion. The combined cost of eliminating both the WEP and the GPO is about $13.5 billion. That's a chunk of change, but when you compare that to over $7 trillion, that would almost be considered budget dust. So what I say to individuals that say, gosh, I'm just really concerned with costs, I say, you know, I'm confused. Help me understand how it is that cost is the factor, because Congress didn't have any problem passing the American Rescue Plan earlier this past year. In the American Rescue Plan, there's a provision that provides $86 billion for private pension systems to bail those systems out. And those systems, the members are in construction, manufacturing, mining, retail, transportation, and entertainment. It includes funds for 124 plans that impact 1 million workers. And in that plan, it provides full coverage for those private pension plans for 3 decades. Just for perspective, the individuals that are impacted by WEP and GPO, we're looking at, about 1.9 million individuals. And here the cost would be $13.5 billion. So it would have been much cheaper to actually include the elimination of WEP GPO. You would have impacted more individuals, and it would have been much more equitable to the entire population of the country by not providing a bailout for systems that are disproportionately male. So the dilemma is they say that it's a cost issue, but yet they had no problem bailing out private plans. And yet when it comes to public plans and providing coverage for individuals that have already paid into a plan, suddenly it's like, well, we're going to have to talk later. So I do make it a point that we are educating our leadership at the federal level to help them understand maybe it's not so much of a cost issue. If you didn't have a problem supporting the American Rescue Plan, then you certainly shouldn't have a problem supporting the elimination of the WEP and the GPO. So what can you do to help? there are a number of things that you can do. CalRTA has been one of the first organizations that's really helped to push for the repeal of these penalties. We've been at the forefront for a number of years trying to eliminate the penalties. I have a little snapshot of our website, calrta.org. We have a whole section just on WebGPO. So if you are like me and like to geek out on this kind of information and you really want to do a deep dive, we actually have quite a bit of research and comprehensive information. But we also have petitions that you can click onto, do a point and click to sign to help repeal the petition. We have some moveon.org petitions to try to get enough signatures to try to, again, build that political momentum that we need to push the issue forward. So if you'd like more information, feel free to use this as a resource. We work with a number of other organizations at both the statewide and the national level to try to collaborate and find a path forward. There are other individual things that you can do. If you have not had a conversation with your member of Congress, asking them to support HR 82, asking them to support 5337, or 5723, give them a call, ask them to co-sponsor. The good news is most of the California delegation has signed on as a co-sponsor. We have a few that are dragging their feet a little, and I think it may actually be, there's been a lot of staff turnover, and it may just be they haven't been as on their A game, and they're working to address that. We have also been asking Representative Neal, and we are beginning to ask Representative Brady to please consider including the GPO in their repeal bills. And if they were to do that, we would obviously have another discussion about supporting those bills. Schedule Zoom meetings with your elected officials, so with your members of Congress. We have legislative alerts that we send out on a weekly basis. We use them in a different way each day. We are literally trying to ensure that at some point in time, every single member of Congress who has not yet co-sponsored these bills will be one of our targeted representatives that we will be contacting at a weekly basis. But we can't have people contact 500 people in 1 week. But what we can do is say, we're going to focus on this group of 10 individuals this week. And then each week we're choosing another 10. We are going through those individuals systemically. We took some time to focus on members of the Women's Bipartisan Caucus. That was very successful. We've now been reshifting those efforts to now focusing on other states that are impacted by the WEP-GPO, but specifically calling those members of Congress from those states who have not yet co-sponsored. And so we are being very targeted in our legislative alerts in regard to whom we're contacting. And it's also important to educate your members. It's very important that faculty understand that these provisions are out there, because that could have a major factor on the decisions that you're going to make when it comes to your retirement. If you were counting on your Social Security and that was going to be a major component on your retirement security, you might need to reevaluate whether you have the ability to financially afford to retire when you do, if you find out that you are indeed impacted by the WEP-GPO. So education is extremely important. And then finally, contact the president and the vice president, ask them to include repeal and a Social Security and expansion package. We recently had a postcard campaign where we were having members reach out to both the president and the vice president, who have both indicated their support for these issues earlier when they were campaigning. We want to ensure that this is not only something that's a campaign promise, but we want to see this come to fruition. And then finally, I know that this is a very complicated issue, and it can get extremely complicated for part-time faculty, depending on what is offered as a retirement mechanism by your district, and if you choose something different than CalSTRS. But I made sure I went through a little quickly in case there's any questions specific to the workshop today.
John Martin has his hand up.
Before we go to any questions, Jennifer, there have been a lot of requests for this presentation to be shared. Is that a possibility?
I sent it to you earlier. Feel free to send it out.
Wonderful. I'm glad to be happy. So, okay. We're still sharing, I think.
Oh, I can stop that.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we are.
And if
Okay.
anyone else has questions, please raise your hand so that we see it rather than monitoring the chat. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick question. I know in politics, there's always a lot of give and take. What if a congressperson says, I will support elimination of the WIP, but I will not support the GPO? Just how far is your organization will say, no, sorry, it's either all or nothing, or both or nothing? So I just want to know if there might be in the future, you may have to settle for a political compromise by delinking the two.
It is tricky. You love to put me in those situations where it's like, oh, I need to wait first, be diplomatic before I say something. So you did it again, John. Here, what I would say is there's a reason, and each organization is different, right? And so sometimes it's very helpful that a number of organizations have the same response, and sometimes it can be strategically helpful if some organizations have a different approach or a different response, right? Because that's what a team environment is. We have not taken support positions on Representative Neal or Representative Brady's bills because, again, they only include the WEP. If we were to see those bills move forward and make it, would we be disappointed? Well, absolutely not, because if we can see the WEP eliminated, that is certainly a step forward. One of the dilemmas and one of the things we're worried about, though, is that if the WEP is included, now you've just significantly reduced the amount of individuals in the political push for trying to then get the GPO eliminated. And they may also say, well, we just did one. Now you got to wait around for a while. It's kind of like wait your turn. And, you know, what we've also put in some of our talking points is, you know, women have been asked to wait their turn for a long time. And now it's time for this Congress to step up. So I would say, I think that there is a valid argument to say that the two should not be delinked, because if they are, I think that it would inhibit the ability to try to get GPO probably within our lifetime at the speed that Congress tends to move on some issues. Does it mean it's absolutely impossible? No, but I think that it would make it strategically much more difficult. And one of the other dilemmas is then we'd also be allowing a number of our colleagues to essentially be political collateral, so that some could have. So it's very similar to some of the discussion you were having on the previous topic, where, you know, some get some, but it could be at the cost of others. That's a very difficult decision to make.
Thanks. Maha, your hand is up next.
Hi, sorry, this is more on a personal basis, but I have no social security to speak of. I've never, so I'm totally subjected to GPO, and right now, basically, it eliminates everything I have in CalSTRS. So my question is, should I work outside, back to the getting the Ralph's job or Starbucks job? Should I go get a little job just to have some social security? Is there any advantage in that?
Well, it's not going to take, so just to clarify, this won't impact your CalSTRS pension. This won't take your CalSTRS pension away. That's yours. But the Social Security benefits from your spouse, in the event that your spouse passes before you, the Social Security benefits of your spouse that would have gone to you, those may be reduced or eliminated. And unfortunately, unless you're going to be able to have at least more than 20, but if not realistically around 30 years of full-time work, it's not going to pan out. So the only thing that getting a part-time job would do now would be to give you some extra income now, which if you already know, I'm a big planner. I'm a big long-term planner since I worked on retirement issues for so long. that wouldn't be a bad thing to do, because if you know at some point in time you're not going to get your spouse's Social Security benefits, you do want to integrate that. I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give you financial advice, but if I were in your situation, I would try to do whatever I could to create as much of a cushion so that in the event that that does take place, maybe that little cushion can make life a little easier.
So this is, why is it only when the spouse passes away? So if I claim his Social Security when we reach 60, whatever, 67.
Well, now if you have there are ways you can temporarily game the system. So if you retire and let's say your spouse works in the private sector, if you retire and they retire, how does it go? You're able to, your spouse can collect their Social Security while they're retired, and you can get your CalSTRS benefit, right? But I have to talk to Susie. She's figured out a few ways. Susie Dixon is our government relations committee. There are a few ways that you can collect something temporarily, but it's very tricky, and it's only until your spouse passes. So once they pass, all that is going to go away. But I do have to say it gets tricky, and it's not something I would necessarily advise, because if you mess up, such as what just happened to an individual that contacted me earlier this week, this individual is going to have to pay back over $42,000. And so it's not necessarily something that I would recommend. So, the best thing to do is unfortunately assume if you did work in the private sector before you taught, you're probably going to be impacted, and try to integrate that into your long-term retirement planning.
Thank you. Sue, you're next.
From what I understand, if let's say I wanted to work past retirement age, I could still collect Social Security. I could get the full amount. They wouldn't apply the WEP. That it only starts to the WEP only starts to be used when I start collecting my retirement CalSTRS retirement. Is that true?
That's kind of the way that some folks have done it, where you do it and you don't collect it right until you hit certain ages. It's just important to make sure you read between all the dotted lines to make sure you're really understanding those decisions clearly. And I might even suggest before you make that kind of a decision, bring all the information and documentation to a financial planner, have them look over that as well, just to make sure that it would actually work the way that you would like it to work.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
And if you're not married, the GPO does not impact you.
let me step in a second. We're at the official ending time, but I see a lot of people still have questions, and we did schedule 1:30 to 2 for questions and answers. So I'm going to suggest we go ahead and ask Jennifer questions while we have the expertise here. And if you have other questions for for any of the other panelists, please feel free to jump in. I think most of them are still here. So yeah, let's just go ahead and continue to have a conversation about what interests us.
Perfect. Please be sure to raise your hand in Zoom with the icon so that we can catch you here. So Connie McDowell, you're up next with your question for Jennifer.
Yes, I'd like to know how the WEP affects people on the Apple plan, because it's not a pension, it's just a lump sum. And when I started at Palomar College back in 2007, I don't even remember being offered CalSTRS, so I took Apple, and I'm already collecting Social Security, and I'm kind of freaked out that once I do withdraw those funds that it could lower my Social Security benefit.
That's a really good question, Connie. You should not be impacted. But what I would encourage you to do, and part of it, like I was saying, so much of this is circumstantial depending on how you worked within the community college system or other systems. So if you've only worked for the one district and you were in the Apple plan throughout your tenure there, then you're not going to be impacted. But if there was a point in time, let's say where you were a freeway flyer and you were working at a neighboring district and you happen to be in the CalSTRS defined benefit plan in that district, then you may be impacted. So that it's important for you to just understand what your circumstances were. From what you're hearing the limited information, it would appear that you wouldn't be, but there would be so many additional questions that would need to be.
Actually, I did use a worksheet that I got from the San Diego Adjunct Faculty Association, and I have like 23 years of what are the substantial earnings where I did pay into Social Security, because I lived in Washington State before I moved here in 2007. So I'm just concerned because I don't have any other pension. All I have is Social Security and my savings and Apple. So so you don't think I would be affected on the Apple plan?
It doesn't sound like you would be affected because you're not part of the CalSTRS system, and it's by virtue of being in the CalSTRS defined benefit plan that triggers you being impacted by WebGPO. So if you're not a member of that plan, that should not impact you. However, there are other public employees that are also subject to the WebGPO, such as police, fire. And so if you did work in the public sector in some other field, it is important to find out, depending on what that field was, whether or not you would be impacted.
But on the Apple Plan's website, they do say that it's subject to the windfall elimination provision, but I don't understand since mine's not a pension.
Yeah, that would be something that you would need to do some research in.
Yeah.
I would suggest you contact the Apple plan. But our work is really focused on CalSTRS.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Raymond, you're up next. Just unmute yourself. Oh, you are unmuted.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I just had a quick question. Is it true that Congress has exempted itself from these two laws?
Congress has exempted themselves from a great many things.
Yes, I just wanted to add to the blood pressure problem.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they exempted themselves. When they created this, they had it subject to different populations, and they're not considered federal employees the same way other federal employees are. And we can speculate and pontificate as to all of the moral or immoral reasons as to why that they would do that. But thank you, Raymond. Again, that just another reason to get your blood boiling.
Yeah, so congressional mendacity and corruption. I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
All right, Patricia, you're up next.
Hi, yes, I have two questions. One is related to the GPO and an ex-spouse. Is there an impact there?
Well, we have this whole 50% rule in California. I believe that starts to get much more complicated, but I believe that can be impacted in the factor as well. So that's one of the situations where it really helps to have a financial advisor, perhaps even an attorney, depending on how everything had worked. But that is a possibility, but that really gets into minutia where it takes having some better experts than I on the minutia.
Okay, and then the second question is, it's related to what somebody asked earlier, because I spoke with somebody at Social Security about a week ago and said, because I'm 66 and several months, and I asked if I could take my Social Security benefits now while I am still working, because I'm not retired yet in my position that pays into STRS, and would they still take out that windfall elimination amount? And he said yes. Now I know that I've also talked to Social Security 5 times, and every time since 2019 they've given me a different answer. So
yeah, and that's what is so difficult, because the counselors that they have are really aren't experts at WebGPO, and they have to essentially pull up a screen that helps to describe that to help them understand. I can't say, and what the best advice I can do is some of the Social Security offices are reopening to in-person meetings. If you are able to do something like that, grab your mask and make an appointment, because what I have heard is sometimes it really does change the scope of the conversation when you have an in-person meeting and you're able to get more effective information and documentation.
Jennifer, I don't want to, well, I have to interrupt because that's false statement. I'm retired from Social Security, not from my STRS defined benefit. Nothing is taken out.
They can't take your CalSTRS, as I've noted before.
No, I'm retired in Social Security. It's not lowered because I haven't retired my STRS account yet. And I thought I heard that she said that Social Security said that they would, even if she wasn't retired from her STRS account, they would take the WEP out.
Yes, that's what they told me.
Yeah, that's incorrect. Absolutely incorrect.
You made
that's
my
why I
day.
wanted to make sure you knew that.
Well, here's what I want to tell you. They don't always get everything correct. And if they get something incorrect, they make you pay it back. And so I'm really trying to focus more on that issue. And that's part of the dilemma. Because I talked to someone, or even though it's not right, I don't want to create the illusion that it never happens because someone just had to pay a very big penalty. You should not be impacted. But it never hurts to check and check and check again and make sure that you have documentation. If you've gotten that information in writing and someone's giving you incorrect information from Social Security, you do want to have that documented. But if they did something that is incorrect and the penalty would be applicable to you, even if they were incorrect, they will still charge you. So you're right. It's that is not how it's supposed to work. But I want to be realistic that it does not mean that they don't make mistakes. I've seen a lot of mistakes. And as you all know, the bureaucracy of those systems is not in your favor. And so it's just important to make sure that I have found sometimes that if you're able to meet with someone in person, you can eliminate a lot of those ineffective conversations because sometimes when you're seen as a real person as opposed to a number, they actually start to care about you.
Thank you.
Carol Ann?
Okay, first of all, we do have somebody in our SADAFA group that he started taking Social Security at 62, as young as he could, and did not take STRS until this last year, much later. And they did not address the WEP issue until he started collecting from CalSTRS. Secondly, Raymond made a comment about was the Senate and, well, Congress, are they subject to it? Any of you that have friends that are being paid into CalPERS, you know, our classified people, they also pay into Social Security. So they are not subject to WEP or GPO because CalPERS and Social Security are both being deducted from their paychecks. And from what I understand, that's what's going on with Congress. They pay into both systems. I have one other person in our SADAFA group. And when I say SADAFA, that's San Diego Adjunct Faculty Association. Arnie Schoenberg just posted in chat link to some of the stuff that we have put up there because we have had you and several other people doing beautiful talks. So we've got a lot of information, and somebody mentioned the worksheet that they found on the SADAFA. I created it, and it makes it easier to figure out how many years you have. Anyway, one of our members pays into Apple, but she's got such a small amount. She's wondering if she just continues taking Social Security and doesn't bother collecting any of this or collects it as a lump sum, are they still going to do WEP? If she just gets her money as one thing, you know, one payout, one check.
And remind me what system she was
She's
in?
in Apple. Well, she asked me specifically about Apple, but she thinks that under CalSTRS that she has also got such a small amount, she'll take just a lump sum.
If she was in CalSTRS, even if it was a short period of time, by virtue of being part of that system, she would be impacted. I can't say for Apple because I'm not an expert at Apple.
No one is.
Yeah. So if you're saying it is, then that would be unfortunate. But that's just another reason to want to eliminate the web GPO. And I do have about 3 more minutes before I have one more meeting. And actually with CalSTRS on an issue that could be helpful.
Julie, you're up next.
Thank you. Yes, could you give the website again that you mentioned earlier about calculating? And then also, you said the GPO only applies in 14 states. So if you are living in a state that's not one of the 14, does that mean the GPO won't apply to you when it comes to?
It doesn't matter if you're living in the state, it matters where. So let's say if you move to a state where it doesn't impact, that doesn't protect you. It's where did you do all of the earnings when you were active. I just put on the chat that link to the planner.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then that link is also provided in the PowerPoint. Remind me, another part of the question.
I didn't understand your answer to the GPO question. If it's about, so it's where, so for example, for my husband, it's going to be the state where he made the earnings, even though.
No, you're going to be impacted. So if you worked in CalSTRS and the defined benefit plan, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter what state your spouse lives, doesn't matter where he earned. What matters is you're going to get impacted no matter what. And it doesn't matter if you move to another state at some other point in time.
So if I collect, if for some reason he died and I start collecting, as long as I delay my CalSTRS pension, I shouldn't see the deductions yet, it sounds like.
Yeah, potentially that would be what the situation is. But not everyone can, it depends on your financial options, right?
Right.
We all have different savings. We all have different systems that we set up to retire in. So it depends on what your options are. If that's an option, sure. That's something to consider. But also think is the Social Security earnings, is that more substantial than your retirement check? And also remember when you get your retirement check, that's something that's going to be achieving COLA over time, et cetera. So you might want to do kind of your own version of a little actuarial table to find out what's going to be economically beneficial for you in the long run.
Okay, let me interrupt. I think Valerie's point in chat is very good. This is not a personal financial counseling session. We've only got 15 minutes. Jennifer has to go soon, and people probably have other questions about other issues.
I've actually got about 1 more minute. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Thank you very much for your time, and certainly wonderful collection of information for everybody. I'm sure we all appreciate that. So folks, if you have other questions, because Jennifer's got less than a minute, so she's not going to take any, but if you have questions for any of the other panelists, please.
By the way, Jennifer, thank you so much for your presentation. We're going to be sharing it on websites and with the attendees today. It's very useful.
And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share this afternoon. I hope you're all safe and well, and I hope that you're not impacted by web GPO. That would be my wish for you.
Thank you. And David,
all right, have a great afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And David, David, thank you for being friends with Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
He's great. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We have 3 people with hands up, and they happened during Jennifer's speech, so I don't know if this is still relevant. So Cecilia, do you still have a question for another panelist?
Yes, I do. I belong to CalSTRS just 1 year in 1985 to 1986, and then they considered that I retired. That's what it said, even though I quit. and they sent me back everything from CalSTRS minus taxes. So I haven't been in CalSTRS since then. So, and I've been paying Social Security all these years. So would that impact me from 85, 86?
I'm not sure we have the expertise to answer that. Jennifer has left.
Well, what STRS sent you back was actually your contributions to CalSTRS, not the districts. So you are out of CalSTRS. You're no longer in that system, and you won't be receiving anything.
Yes, great.
So.
No problem.
Okay. Harold, you were next. The name says Harold.
Actually, it's Loria Harold, but
I
mine
knew it was wrong, but
yeah,
okay.
Mine was a CalSTRS question, so I'm sure that it's not going to be appropriate to ask here because it's pretty involved. How do I get that answered?
Well, if you can send us the question, we can forward it to Jennifer or to we have other CalSTRS people.
Okay, so
you put your email in the chat.
So I would contact CalSTRS. Is that the bottom line?
Well, you can contact us and
okay.
And CalSTRS is always the best place to go. But for a quick answer that we can answer, ask us, and if not, we'll direct you to STRS.
Okay, so do you want me to put my email, just my email? You don't want the whole question, do you? It's pretty involved.
Yeah, just your email, your email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen, you were next.
You're muted. Ellen,
You're muted, Ellen.
Ellen.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So the question, well, it was more a comment because I'm in this situation right now. And what I have been doing, and I went to Social Security and talked to someone, did it again a second time and got the same story. Now, I'm well aware that even that doesn't protect me. It's only 2 people after all. But what I was told is if I keep teaching even one class at Foothill, I'm therefore continuing to contribute to CalSTRS. I don't have to take money out of CalSTRS. I retired when I was, I think, 65 or 66. I'm 72 now. And I have been collecting my Social Security. And so far, of course, there's been nothing. I'm a little worried about this refund thing, that I might have to give it all back, even though I was told twice that this is legit. And I'm assuming that what I'll do is just keep right on working and teaching at least one class for a very long time, just because I love it, not because of the money. So I wondered if anybody had heard that from Social Security or just what we heard today.
You're asking whether or not the non-collected CalSTRS will impact your Social Security.
Now, my impression is that it will not impact my Social Security until I start collecting it.
Right.
If I keep working, I won't be able to collect it. So I'm not collecting it. I'm working. I get my Social Security, and then if later I have to retire for one reason or another, then it'll change, and we'll have to do what comes next.
Right. So in your case, your Social Security is more than your CalSTRS?
I think so, yes.
Right. Okay. Because that's what I had planned to do, because my Social Security was nothing compared to my CalSTRS. So I was going to retire, collect my CalSTRS, which was the major retirement, and keep teaching and not contributing to CalSTRS, but just collecting my retirement. So a lot of it depends on what's your biggest income, Social Security or CalSTRS.
Right.
So
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't even know anymore what I've been doing this for 32 years and I haven't looked lately to see what it would be.
Go to my CalSTRS and find out, because you might have some changes to make.
Yeah, I guess so. I think. And the other question is, does the Faculty Association or anybody that you know of have a way of recommending financial planners who know about this?
You're at Foothill?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Let me get a hold of, if you send me your email, I'll let you know.
Okay, Raymond, it's Brennan Raymond, right, at Foothill?
That's correct.
Okay.
Chris, you're up next. Do you have a financial question?
No, I don't have a financial question.
Thank God.
My question is,
there's so many different names for the part-timers. You got the part-timers, all the others. Why can't we just have one name to signify part-timers? Or is that too difficult to do?
John, you have a hand up. You want to answer that question?
You got to recognize that there are 72 districts, or 73, depends who you count, and each district have their own contract and their own demographics of part-time faculty. Some people love the word adjuncts, and some people hate it, and so they come up with a new name. At Butte College, we call ourselves associates, and at Shasta College, we call ourselves adjuncts. So it depends on what district you're in. So that's why we have different acronyms or different labels for us.
But can't the ed coder do something, just give us, quote, one name, so when we talk to some other people, they know what we're talking about. If we talk about adjunct, maybe they don't know what adjunct means, but if we talk about part-timers, then we know it's part-timers.
Well,
or just call us all professors, and then we won't have a label, and then we can get parity fees.
This is not an EDCO issue. This is a local issue.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Maha, you were up next. You're on.
Sorry, it's back to the financial thing. It's just I heard something and it gave me an idea. So if I'm gonna get more from my husband's Social Security, then way more than I could get from CalSTRS, the way it sounds to me is withdraw the CalSTRS at some point without the additions that they put in, right? And that I can separate from that and just continue. So that's just the money that I contributed, right? Would that work once I retire? I mean, I haven't even vested yet, so I have no idea. All this money I just moved my cash balance into defined benefit, thinking it'll be better, and now realize it's not what it was a mistake maybe. And so what if I just withdraw all that money without the money being put in by the state, or right? And then continue with Social Security. Would that be better, or does it make a difference?
That sounds like a question for a STRS counselor.
Yeah, but nobody seems to have. No, you talk to STRS, they tell you we don't deal with Social Security. There's no one to talk to who really knows things.
Yeah, well, it also depends on how much greater. What is the Social Security dollar amount we're talking about?
It's a lot more from my husband than I would get. I haven't even invested in CalSTRS after all this time. I mean, it's just.
Yeah. Well, don't forget your Social Security will be reduced by the amount of your STRS, and if the STRS isn't that much, it may not impact your.
Oh, so it's the same. So basically, it's like getting my husband's Social Security.
Yeah.
It's not going to make a difference. Okay.
Basically, if you would get $2,000 from your husband and your STRS is $200, they deduct the $200. You get the STRS, you get that, and you come out to the same amount of money as you would have gotten from your husband.
All right, that's good to know.
Folks, we have 5 minutes left. So if you have a financial question, I suggest putting it in the chat, putting your email there, because we won't have time to answer everyone's financial questions. So Scott, is your question financial?
No, I don't think so.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say essentially what David just said, and this goes to Maha's question, and I think Ellen said that she is not yet retired from STRS, teaching one class. At the end of the day, right, all that's happening here is that if you collect both, then the Social Security can be reduced, and unlike what David said, it won't be eliminated. Ultimately, you might not get very much from them, but the amount that is reduced is not. I mean, when you add the two together, you're still better off taking both than you were taking only one. So it's not what you want. It's not the full amount they promised, but you are better off taking both. So the various comments we're hearing about delaying, not doing this, ignoring one or the other, I think at the end of the day, those are going to be damaging to you. And I think there's some misunderstanding here. You're always better at getting a little bit instead of nothing.
Okay, Victor, you're next.
Yeah. So they already talked most of what I was about to say is continuing to teach just to avoid the penalty or deduction from the Social Security doesn't make sense, because as part of the formula to calculate your CalSTAR payment is I forget how many months or years, like maybe 2.5 years payment. So if, let's say, you only teach one course, right, your payment will be, your salary will be very low. So eventually when you actually receive the CalSTAR payment or the pension payment, it will be lower. So that doesn't make sense. You look puzzled.
Yeah, I'm not sure I followed how you're making less from CalSTRS. You're not making a lot more, which is one reason I retired. I figured my monthly income went up by like $25 a year for every year I kept teaching. I thought, well, that's not worth it. So that's why I started taking CalSTRS as opposed to waiting and watching it really increase. Well, it wasn't going to really increase on one class. So that's why I thought, well, I'll just collect the CalSTRS.
If you look at the formula they use to calculate your final payment, the payment, the total payment that you get for the last immediate, let's say, past 5 years, not 5 years, 2 years, is taken into account. All right. So of course, your load, the total load that you have, is also actually, it's a major factor, but the immediate pay is also a factor. So that will lower your final pay, is what I'm trying to say. You know, someone who's familiar with the formula they use, you can check out the formula at the CalSTAR website. Right, that's one of the factors. So it's load times your past 2 years payment times.
But it's your best 3 years, isn't it?
No, your most recent 2 years or 3 years, whatever.
No, that's incorrect. It's your highest paid 3 years.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, in the past, most recent 3 years, not any.
That is not correct.
It is correct. I just talked to the advisor.
Well, that was wrong because.
All right, let's not end in a pissing contest here.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's wrap this up. Okay. So it's the big hands on the 12 and the little hands on the 2. So officially we're finished here. And I'd like to thank everybody for spending some time with us today. I hope you've learned things. If you have any questions at all to follow up, you can email me, and if I don't know the answer, I probably know someone who does, and I'm happy to be a clearinghouse. And I'd like to thank Lydia and Harlan behind the scenes for making all this work.
Yes.
And certainly Dana for moderating the chat much better than I can. And thanks again to all of you for coming today. Thank you.